On May 23rd, 2025, the MSC Elsa 3, a 28-year-old container ship, left Vizhinjam Port in Kerala near Trivandrum, bound for Kochi, carrying about 640 containers, 13 of them packed with hazardous cargo, including calcium carbide, which can ignite on connecting with water. It can become flammable. Less than 24 hours later, about 38 nautical miles off Kerala's coast, it sent out a distress call after developing a 26-degree list to starboard and flooding in a cargo hold. By dawn on May 25th, the ship had sunk to the seabed, the Arabian seabed, 50 meters down, and had taken with it over 450 tons of fuel oil and a trail of debris that is now choking Kerala's shores. It's washing up all over Kerala's shores. The good news, all 24 crew were saved, but there is much to be determined by way of how bad the news is for the fishing communities of Alappuzha, Alappuzha, Kollam, Ernakulam, and Thiruvananthapuram. And we are afraid that a disaster is on our hands.
Yeah, Arti. Right now, we've been making all sorts of calls to people in the affected areas, and the bottom line is Kerala's coastline is on the edge. There are containers washing ashore. Some of them are leaking plastic pellets, nurdles, that threaten marine life. There is an oil slick looming with about 84 tons of diesel, 367 tons of furnace oil that is still inside the ship and needs to be removed safely. A 20 nautical mile fishing ban has crippled livelihoods, leaving thousands of fish workers struggling for sustenance. And we've been there, we know that they literally survive day to day. Today's catch feeds, provides today's dinner. Uh, the Indian Coast Guard, from an official point of view, the Indian Coast Guard is spraying dispersants. There are salvage teams that are racing against a July 3 deadline for a cleanup. The Kerala government has declared it a state-specific disaster. But as nurdles pile up on beaches and the fears of toxic leaks grow, the question that hangs heavy over this entire scenario is who pays for the damage when a foreign flagged ship leaves chaos in its wake?
This is the 7th episode in From the Marginlands, and we are diving into the MSC Elsa 3 sinking, pun not intended, because it is more than a maritime accident. It's a story of our fragile coasts, vulnerable communities, and the future of safety on our coasts because of a global shipping system that often evades accountability.
Right. Well, besides those immediate issues, there is a larger aspect, and that is something that we need to dig into in course of this episode, and that is that this particular disaster exposes the cracks in how we govern our seas, cracks that hit hardest at places like Kerala, where fish workers already battered by climate change, coastal development, erosion, and we spent a lot of time exploring that earlier as well. Uh, all of which has created a situation where these fisher folks are now facing a very uncertain future. The MSC Elsa 3 for me isn't just a shipwreck, it's a warning of what happens when profit outpaces precaution.
Yeah, and since this has been declared a state disaster, who should the onus of the cleanup fall on? Is it the Kerala State Disaster Management Association?
Honestly, that's what I thought as well. And I'd spoken to Mr. Stephen Kuriakos. He's the member secretary of the Kerala State Disaster Management Agency. If you remember, he was supposed to record with us, but three different times we had to abort because he kept getting dragged into some meeting or the other. So
Mm.
finally, while he was going from one meeting to another, I spoke to him on the phone. And what he told me was that KSDMA in general and Kuriakos himself in particular is Not perhaps the right person that we need to speak to. He said that KSDMA is a coordinating body in this instance. What they are doing is they are liaising with the various agencies that are working on the ground. That's everybody from Coast Guard to civil society cleanup efforts and with the fishermen community, all of that. He said that the KSDMA does not have an active role to play and pointed out that since the immediate issue is pollution, the key person that we probably need to speak to is Srikala S., who's the chairperson of the State Pollution Control Board.
And we did catch up with Ms. Shrikala. And so, as the first guest on this show, which is slightly different, it's more like a documentation of what's going on off the Kerala coast. We have the Kerala State PCB, the Pollution Control Board chairperson, Shrikala S. And let's cut to what she had to say.
Okay, so we wanted to ask a very basic question first. The MSC Elsa 3 capsizing. Could you, from the point of view of the Pollution Control Board, tell us what steps are being taken to address the oil slick and to handle the containers that are washing ashore in places like Kollam, in Alappuzha, Thiruvananthapuram? I don't think containers are washed ashore, but Kollam and Alappuzha definitely. And also, what protocols are being followed by the PCB to ensure safe handling of all these materials?
Regarding this accident, we got information on 24th evening.
Mm-hmm.
And 25th onwards, our officers are in the field to identify any sort of issues. Actually, the state, as per the National Oil Contingency Plan, each state has to prepare a state oil contingency plan. We are in line with this preparation of oil contingency plan, and we have not so far finalized the oil contingency plan. The action is continuing. And thing is that we know the procedure because we are normally referring this National Oil Contingency Plan, and our officers are usually attending this mock drill, which is being conducted by Coast Guard, Indian Coast Guard. So our officers are well aware of the procedure to be followed with respect to any oil spill issue. With this Elsa issue, the Elsa ship, the thing is that it is not the main issue regarding this oil spill. So it is saying that around 640 containers are there along with the sunk to the sea, along with the ship. And main concern is some chemical containers like containers which are having calcium carbide and around 48 numbers of hydrogen chemical and one compound which is used mainly for the rubber manufacturing process. So these are the main concern. So it was not been, we don't know whether it has been scattered or it is sunk along with the ship. And this is the main concern. So we have instructed Coast Guard and the shipping company from the government level itself to salvage this ship along with this container. So regarding oil spill, the main issue is saying that around 14 to 15 nautical miles away from the shore. And the issue may happen like a oil spill spread on the sea as well as it may come to the shore. So we have a separate protocol regarding how to manage this oil spill in the sea and how to clean up the beach. So the procedure is there. We had formed a rapid response team along with this district administration, and we have a state disaster management team, and in part with the district disaster management is also there. This district management authority, the chairman is the district collector. Okay. So the collector and he's also the administrator, district administrator. So he's in touch with all the response members, the rapid response members like Pollution Control Board, Fire Force, police, then factories and boilers. So we are all coordinating all the activities. Our officers are now PCB is doing only collecting samples. We need to get the proper documentation. So we are now taking samples, water samples and soil samples in this beach area because we are around Kochi, we are around 590 kilometers of coastal area. and around 14 districts, among which around 9 districts are coastal districts. So after getting the information of this accident, we have been asking all the district environmental engineers to collect water sample along this seashore, because we are at that time we don't have the idea whether this to where the ship is being drifted. So 25th and 26th only we know that it is moving towards the southwest. So we have concentrated the sampling and the alert in the southern region. Southern region means after Kochi, it means from Alappuzha to Trivandrum. And it has been reported that around 58 numbers of containers are reached. Some of them are stored out, some of them are open. And in Alappuzha and Kochi, these plastic pellets are being deposited along the shoreline. Now, with the help of local administration and the shipping agency, they have engaged some people to manage to collect all these deposited materials. So these materials are being collected by volunteers, and now it is tagged in the shore itself. So KSDMA had prepared an SOP saying that this material has to be transferred to KEIL Ambalamugal for safe custody. This is the present activities what we are doing in Kerala.
Ma'am, you said just now that samples, you began the Pollution Control Board began collecting the samples around the 26th onwards in the 9 coastal districts. Do you have any kind of preliminary assessment of what the impact on water quality, marine life, etc. is?
Presently, the water quality is almost okay. There is no issue because only turbidity because of the heavy rain. Continued for the last 7 days. So the turbidity is the main issue, and some places we are receiving some sort of oil and grease contamination, but it is not in an alarming situation. So Coast Guard is trying to disperse by means of their drone aircraft. Wherever they saw this type of oil slick there, then they will they are using this dispersant for dispersing this oil. And no thick oil has been reported, and the water quality is also almost okay. Some locations, dissolved oxygen is getting slight less than 4. That's all. Other locations, water quality is almost normal like the seawater.
I see. And you also spoke about the containers, some 50 odd containers that have reached the shore, ma'am. There was a report from Shakti Kulangara, for instance, about a fire that broke out while cutting a container open. So, in light of that, is the Pollution Control Board the nodal authority to make sure that these containers are handled safely, or is that the KSDMA?
DMA as well as PCB, because the safety aspects are not as per not as per the scope of Pollution Control Board. We are normally looking around the pollution what may rise due to these activities. But these type of safety aspects, factories and boilers, as well as disaster management authority chairman, district collector is monitoring.
Right.
So at that time, I think within fraction of second, this fire has been doused, and no other issues has been reported. And we are tried to monitor the air quality at that time, but it was heavy rain. Because of that, we couldn't complete that monitoring.
I see. Arti?
Ma'am, do you know any what is the have you all been monitoring the sunk vessel? Calcium carbide, when it reacts with water, it becomes acetylene, which is inflammable. So has there been any leakage of that at all, or have those containers completely been contained? And
so their complaints are said to be intact. No issue or no release has been reported. Once it contacted, because the container inside the container, they are safely stored in separate containers.
Okay.
So it is now intact, no issues has been reported. And we are also ready to take the water sample if any issues happen, like analyzing this calcium carbide, because no calcium carbide, but the calcium carbide react with the water, it will release acetylene and calcium hydroxide. So we are trying to analyze monitor the calcium hydroxide as well as the acetylene gas.
Got it. And are there also, did you say that there were also efforts to recover these containers, intact containers, so that, future they cannot, leak and so on?
Shipping company, along with the directive of ICG, Indian Coast Guard, and government of Kerala, they are, as per the direction, they are trying to remove. I got the information that it's not in an official, but I got the information from the media only. They are saying that 7th or 3rd or 7th of the July, they are completely planning to remove this ship along with the container.
Oh, okay.
So that is
Mm.
right. That is to bring up the ship from the ocean floor and also retrieve the containers.
Containers.
Ma'am, I understand that the Pollution Control Board is coordinating with MSC, the shipping company, and that they have agreed to assist with the cleanup. That is what you also spoke about just now. Could you tell us what specific commitments MSC has made, and how will the PCB ensure accountability?
Actually, we sent a letter and we are asked to submit the proposal with regard to the removal of these materials and all. But we didn't get a formal information because they are having a communication with the this disaster management authority. So we have WhatsApp group. From the group and the disaster management member secretary, he is also continuously contacting me. So I got the information from him and the district administration. I didn't get a formal information from the shipping company or ICT.
Right.
Mm-hmm. How long does PCB have either funds or the appetite to monitor something like this? Will if this thing, they cannot lift it up and bring it to shore or somehow dispose it by July. How long do you guys have an appetite to continue monitoring something like this, which could be
ma'am, we are continuously monitoring. So until government says stop the monitoring, then only we are planning to stop. Otherwise, we are discussing with our environment secretary and we are continuously monitoring.
Okay.
Ma'am, sometime right in the beginning, you spoke about the oil spill contingency plan. You said that the center has a plan, that the state was working on a plan, but it hasn't happened so far. If I remember correctly, ma'am, this effort to create a state oil spill contingency plan began sometime in 2016. And
2016.
yeah, and if I remember correctly, much of the delay is due to cost dispute, retendering, all of that. I had two questions. One is, could you talk a little bit about the challenges that have prevented the finalization of the plan? And a related question is, the absence of a contingency plan, how does it impact PCB's ability to respond effectively to this kind of a crisis?
Preparation of oil contingency plan 2016, we made an expression of interest and we got some documented from these consent parties, but we couldn't complete it because we have planned it in the plan project or the government approval. And we sent that this approval to government, and so due to some technical reasons and all, this Kitco has been, a company has been finalized, but after 2-3 years, they have been escalated their rate. So that was not competed with the amount that has been approved by plan scheme project by government of Kerala. So we again wrote to Kerala government and they asked PCB to rework and retender.
Okay.
So due to that exercise, the thing has been delayed. Now, yesterday we have come. We had that the technical committee meeting. And then next week we'll finalize and we'll award the work.
I see. But as of today, when there isn't a state oil spill contingency plan, does it impact PCB's ability to respond effectively to a crisis of this kind?
No. Naturally, we are in part of the mock drill activities and we know the correct scenario and the correct procedure what to do because the officers are already read the national contingency plan. So we are well aware and we have mobilized all the materials and men for if any casualty happened.
Okay.
Can I ask a more general question, not related to Elsa particularly? Given the fact that you have Vizhinjam on one end and then you have Cochin Ship Terminal on the other end, at least, like a large part of the coast is potentially at risk due to all kinds of, hazards from shipping. What is an ongoing activity that the PCB has to do to be able to, kind of monitor and make sure that the water quality is good? Is there something that you do ongoing on a regular basis?
On a regular basis, we are taking seawater sample from 19 locations in this 590 kilometers of the seacoast region.
Okay.
That's, I think, from we are started in 2021, 22.
22. Okay.
Regularly monitoring.
And those reports are on your website or something like
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Got it.
Right. Ma'am, the one other thing that I had was the oil spill, the debris, the uncertainty of when all of this will settle down. I would imagine that this hits both the fishing community and the tourism business. What is the PCB's assessment of the socio-economic impact of all this? And do you know of any support that is being planned for these affected communities?
That's actually taken by this fisheries department, and government has constituted a committee comprising all the stakeholder departments related to this type of socio-economic aspects and the damage which might have happened due to this problem. So under the chairmanship of Environment Secretary, Government of Kerala Environment Department, and because PCB only cannot assess all these aspects. So with the help of all the contribution from all the department only, we can make a comment on this part.
So as of now, we don't have an agreed upon assessment.
Like fisheries, fishing activities and fishermen issues, government, I think ministry has already taken a couple of meetings and they are assessing. Presently, I think one location having 20 nautical miles around this shipping area has been earmarked for as a banned area. Other locations 25th and 24, 25th, 26th, 25th and 27th, I think entire coast has been banned for fishing. But after 29th, I think onwards, the government has issued a geo in such a way that fishing can be continued except for this location.
Okay. Aarti, you had anything else? I'm kind of...
No, just one question about the plastic noodles that are coming ashore. Is there anything that the PCB can or is doing to be able to facilitate the removal of that from the ecosystem?
PCB is supervising and monitoring. The agency which are deputed by this shipping company and the LSGD, local self-governed institution officers are doing, and they are collected all these plastic pellets, and now it has been stacked in the shore itself. But still, along with the wave, these pellets are coming to the seashore.
So even as you clear up some, there is more coming. And that is a challenge.
I didn't get you.
No, I mean, even as you clear up the nurdles from the beach, there is more being brought in by the waves. Is that the challenge you're talking about?
Yes. Government is also planning to remove these materials also.
I see. Aarti?
No, I don't have anything else.
I think that's pretty much what we wanted to ask, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking the time in the middle of all this. And hopefully we'll be in touch again.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you
very much. So we just listened to the chairperson of the Pollution Control Board, and Srikala was non-committal for the most part, and understandably, I guess, people in government find themselves restricted in what they can say and what they can't. Broadly, she spoke about the coordinated efforts at cleanup, of managing the cleanup of plastic pellets, of the Coast Guard using dispersants to address oil contamination. She spoke about the collection of water and soil samples, which she said is an ongoing operation that will last for some considerable time. All of this will be monitored. Uh, the the takeaway quote from her was that as of date, no significant impact on water quality or marine life has been reported, though calcium carbide containers remain intact and are being monitored for potential leaks. Uh, what did you make of it, and what questions came to your mind, Dati?
So something that we've been discussing, right? That these nurdles, these plastic pellets that have been washing ashore. Um, if you remember a few years ago, it happened in Sri Lanka as well, right? And
Right.
our biodiverse coasts and these nurdles are not good news for anybody, not for us, not for the small aquatic creatures, and terrible news for bioaccumulation. And apparently, these plastic pellets, what we hear now, are washing ashore not just on the Kerala coast. They have washed down south, west, and east and up into Kanyakumari and Tamil Nadu. And apparently, Tamil Nadu has done a better job of cleaning up its beaches quickly because it has technology.
Mhm.
And we are seeing on the Kerala coast, the migrants are picking up nurdles with sieves and without gloves on hands and things like that. So begs the question, why is there such a huge difference given the fact that Kanyakumari and Trivandrum are literally a few a half an hour, 45 minutes by road? Why is it, why can't they borrow this technology, whatever the technology is, to clean up Kerala's beaches?
Yeah, precisely. I mean, talking of the distance, we've actually driven that multiple times when we were exploring the coastline. Uh, that is a valid question, and it needs answers. Another one that came up in the conversation with Srikala is, if you remember, we asked her about the formulation of the state oil spill contingency plan. Now, this plan was first mooted in 2016, which is a point that was made on that call. And she talked about various procedural delays. The way I understood it, the plan was mooted, it was tendered for about 3 years. There was no major action on that. And then 3 years later, the tendering party, the one that was bidding for the contract, came back and said, look, prices have gone up and the tender price needs to be reframed. At which point the government balked and said, oh, wait a minute, we've already fixed the price. And that caused some kind of confusion. Srikala, the last thing she said about that was that they've had a meeting with the relevant committee and that it's now green lighted, and that within a week, the oil contingency, that is the state oil contingency plan, should be in place. She said, in the meantime, they're using the provisions of the central oil spill contingency plan. The question I had was, why is it always, if you remember, Arti, when we spoke to Yuvan, um, the previous podcast, one of the points that he had made was, he said disasters are good for environmentalists because it is only in the aftermath of a disaster that the government feels impelled to act, that laws come into place, and all of that. That's
Mhm.
exactly what is happening over here. In fact, that conversation predates presages this perfectly.
Yeah.
Why did it take a disaster from 2016 to 2025 is 9 years? Why does it take that long for a contingent, and keeping in mind that Kerala coastline has multiple ports, including two very big ones, the Vizhinjam Port and the Cochin Port. Oil is one of the things that are most frequently transshipped between these areas. Why do you suppose it takes governments this long?
That's a great question. It's that jury's out. Um, and it's one thing to talk about oil spills, and pollution along the coasts. Um, but what exactly is involved when something like this happens, we know that this area, especially along Kerala's coast and um, up into Karnataka, is this Malabar upwelling region, the MUR, which is a highly productive, one of 5 upwelling regions across the world, and accounting for about 25% of fish catches, even though it's just 1% of the region area of the region. Um, how do, how does a mishap like this, with hazardous cargo of all kinds, including from pellets to calcium carbide that can form acetylene and blow up, or oil, affect the biodiversity of this region and the people who depend upon the biodiversity of this region? And we wanted to speak to someone, and the name that kept coming up was that of Professor Biju Kumar, professor of the Department of Aquatic Biology and Fisheries in the University of Kerala. And we caught up with him twice. Actually, he was very kind to give us time, first as a, just trying to understand what was happening, and then we actually recorded with him. And so let's hear what he had to say, just to give us a sense of what the biodiversity and what the pollution means for a coast like this.
So, Professor, from the point of view of a marine biologist, could you give us a broad overview to start us off with of the capsizing of the vessel and the aftermath? What do you see as the overall scenario, and what is the primary concern that you have with what's going on right now?
Well, with regard to, there are, in terms of ecosystem damages, some of the concerns which we have already had is regarding oil pollution.
Mhm.
And second, the containers with the calcium carbide. And third, whether there is some kind of hazardous, the so-called quote unquote, and materials in the containers. Okay.
Mhm.
And then, after a few days, we also realized that some of the containers also carry plastic nurdles, which are, primarily meant for plastic manufacturing industries in India. So, now the concerns are multifarious. One is that, what is actually the extent of pollution? And
Right.
now, fortunately, the oil pollution is under control, primarily because, both the Coast Guard and other organizations have been trying to contain the oil pollution to some extent. And that they are successful primarily because there is no leakage from the other containers. Okay. It is only from the engine that, the oil spill happened, and not the extent of larger oil spill, so that they were able to contain that using the noble surfactants and other chemicals. That is one part. And second part now is the drifting of the materials to longer distances, especially the plastic turtles, and that is a major concern now. And the remaining chemicals, the chemical containers, and what they are going to do with that. Okay, and and now they have already done underwater survey using the latest technologies, and that shows that many of these containers are down there at 50-meter depth. Now the issue is how to pump out the chemicals, or bring it back on board. So that exercise they are experimenting, and there is, because we don't have that kind of an experience before. So the technology, then they have to finalize, and they have to, they put in the SOP, the standard operating procedure, and then, then they will do that. That will require time. And unfortunately, this is a monsoon season. Okay. And this is not easy to do the whole exercise at present now.
Right.
And that is the only challenge. And with regard to the chemicals, and it is the primary demand now is to locate them, and find out the strategies how to remove the chemicals from the containers as such. And some of the containers also carry huge amount of oil, both the engine oil as well as the diesel. And these are the challenges, and these I think they can do, the removing of the materials. And after a few days, the concern was actually the huge amount of plastic nurdles which is already there in the system. And now, yesterday, I understand that, the government of Kerala has already convened a meeting of the experts and the stakeholder departments. And what was decided, and one of the challenge now is to remove the plastic noodles, which is already there in the beaches. It's huge amount from Varkala to now it's spreading up to Kanyakumari. And then in Tamil Nadu, they're more faster in removing the noodles now. And because they have devised the indigenous method of sieving it through the conventional sieves, and only the plastic noodles collected are removed. And in Kerala, of course, they are removing it along with the sand. Okay, so it's more expensive and not that kind of a good technology. And in the West, where such incidents happens, they have automatic suction devices and machines which can roll over that, and then that will automatically remove the pellets, which of course is not available. That kind of a machine is not available. So what we have to do is definitely whatever is there in the beach, we have to remove it physically, and that is the only option left. But our concern is not that. The huge amount of tons and tons of micro plastic the plastic noodles which are there in the ocean, which are now slowly getting drifted to other parts of the parts of Tamil Nadu as well. So that will have a long-term consequences, especially in terms of the distribution of the microplastic particles along the food chain, and then the chemicals contained therein. Okay. So that is, and I also understand that yesterday's meeting, it is decided that some of the agencies, the national research agencies, along with the Fisheries University here, they will examine the material. They will undertake continuous monitoring of marine ecosystem, as well as they collect samples of the edible organisms, which often the human beings consume. And then they subject them to detailed analysis periodically, both from the surface and the water layer and at the bottom. So this is a strategy which is so far rolled out, and that is all.
So you talked of 2-3 things. One obviously is the process of getting the containers off the ocean bed, bringing it to shore, and making sure that the contents are safely removed or quarantined or whatever it is. But you spend most of the time talking about the noodles. Could you, for the benefit of the viewers, talk a little bit about what the actual issue is with microplastics in the ocean?
Yeah, see, there are in majority of the oceans, the plastic in the ocean basically come from the land-based sources. And because nobody creates plastics in the ocean except the fishing gears and the accessories. And majority of the drainage canals and the rivers carry them to the ocean. And in the ocean, they are, it's not plastic alone. Everything in the land, in the form of the solid waste materials, all these things are together called the marine debris. And part of the majority of the marine debris is actually the plastic materials. And what happens in the ocean is that because of the wave action, they're converted into very, very fine particles very easily, unlike in the land. So, any particle, plastic particle or plastic material which is less than 3 mm are called the microplastics. Okay. And the microplastics in the ocean may be 2 types, and one is a primary microplastic, and the one is the secondary microplastics. And the primary microplastics are the plastic materials purposefully created for certain activities. Like the industry require, for example, you are making a polythene cover, you are making a squeeze bottle. So for that, you cannot actually use you cannot recycle plastic. You have to use the virgin plastic materials. And for easy transportation, they are converted into finer particles, okay, pellets. And these are called the plastic pellets or plastic noodles, okay. And these noodles are the raw materials for the plastic manufacturing industry. And the noodles may be different types, like the polypropylene or polyethylene, whatever it be, in different kinds of polymers. They are all different kinds of polymers. And the ones which are deposited in Kerala coast are not the indigenous ones. And every sack which we have seen here comes from different countries, like some from the Middle East, some from China. So that means, they're all brought to India from different sources, primarily to cater the demands of the polymer industry here, because India is one of the largest plastic producing nation in the world. Not only plastic production, but also the plastic waste generation. So both
Right.
are there. Yeah. And then these are the primary plastics. And in India, there are no much records earlier of the primary plastic pollution, okay, or nodal pollution, because in few cases it occurred in smaller quantities, and that is all. And whatever we see in India are all secondary microplastics, which are the broken material of plastic from the land, okay, which ultimately reaches water. And that means if a plastic cover is there, a polythene bag is there, it reaches sea and converted into finer particles, and these are all called secondary plastics. Okay, but here is a very strange thing that the factory material, the primary plastics, the plastic nodals are here. And the problem there is that these are all fine particles which almost simulate the food materials of the organisms, marine organisms. So they easily consume that. And once they consume that, all these plastic pellets, whatever may be the kind of plastics, they are made soft from the fossil fuels. So they are all brittle also. So in order to make them softer, a large number of chemicals are added into that. And large number of chemicals are also added into that to reduce flame and make it much, much softer and adding color. But whatever material we saw, they're all white. That means before the processing. Okay, later only color is added. That means that much material is less. That many chemicals are less in the system. So we have the chemicals in the form of polymers, and then they in a longer run, nobody is going to remove it from the ocean. Nowhere in the world it happened. So it's impossible also. So it's considering the huge amount of material there, and it's drifting along with the current, etc., etc. So what is left in the ocean definitely will be there for a very, very long period of time. And then they will be subjected to again conversion into still finer particles called nano plastic particles. That means the contamination is much more easier in a longer period of time. So this essentially means that you need to have some kind of stronger monitoring in the system. And fortunately, here there are no larger coral reef ecosystems here. So that means then it would have been much more damaging, the impacts. So now the concern is actually their contamination to the human system along the food chain, which requires some kind of monitoring. I don't say that all these plastic pellets carry huge amount of chemicals, but there are chemicals which are harmful to human species, including some of the materials like bisphenol. Or bisphenol is a kind of persistent organic pollutant, or it's called bisphenol. And this bisphenol mimic the hormones once it gets into the body. So that means these chemicals are to be monitored in the system. And if there is more, and then there should be some kind of restriction as far as using these materials, the food materials are concerned. So monitoring is now essential in the system.
It is both essential and will have to be done for a long term, right?
Yes.
I mean, to reduce what you said into layman terms, what you're basically saying is fish eat these microfish and other marine life consume these microplastics, and then human beings consume the fish that is consumed the microplastics, and so the possibility of infection or ill effects spreads from marine life to human life and so on.
Yes.
You also mentioned coral, so there's some apprehension that this is drifting towards the Gulf of Mannar, which does have coral reefs.
Yes.
If that happens, what is the possible damage to the coral reef because of microplastic contamination?
Yeah. Coral reefs basically are with a hard exoskeleton. Okay, that's why they look very stronger outside. But their life depends upon the polyps, very, very softer polyps, which comes out of these hard structures through minute openings. The issue is that, once they choke these corals, and they will immediately kill it. That is a problem. So, and in all these coral systems, once you have huge amount of microplastics, and then they are going to soak it fully, and then you finally see the death of these corals, because the polyps have to come out, and then they have to breathe, and they have to take out the nutrients, etc. So that is only the concern. And Some of our friends are doing the survey in Gulf of Mannar, and I think it has not reached up to the Gulf of Mannar area because drifting is more towards Sri Lankan coast. Yeah,
Right.
so that is what I was told by them. So whatever maybe, it's not India and Sri Lanka, but see where in the ecosystem the damage is very common. So that has to be monitored in short. And also there is something which science could not understand so far, and that is another part of the story. And that means, if there are nanoparticles, the microplastics still can be converted into very, very fine, the nanoparticles, which is a major problem now, because that normally a plastic material inside our intestine, some of the chemicals may be absorbed, but otherwise it will go out. And then if it is microplastic, there is all possibility that they come through the blood vessels. They can enter the blood vessels, and then they can reach any part of your human body, because these nanoplastic materials, it is detected from every part of human body in the very recent publications. But what damage they does to the system is all under investigation. There are some, there are some reports of immune response and inflammatory reactions in many vital parts of the human body and then other experimental animals' body. So these are some of the things which are really a health concern, and science is actually addressing these issues in the very recent past.
Sir, I know Aarti has a lot of questions. I'm about to turn it over to her, but before that, I had one very layman practical question. For instance, I like fish. I eat fish a lot. When I pick up fish, do I have any means of confirming whether this fish is in some form or fashion contaminated, or do I just chance my luck?
And no, in fact, no. No technology, no sensors can detect that, But fortunately, the larger microplastic wouldn't stay, primarily because we remove the intestine and parts like that, and then only we eat.
Yeah.
And but some of the organisms do absorb them into the body, like the mussels or like the clams and all. And they are more prone to this kind of accumulation than fish in that sense. But if it is nanomaterial, absolutely we cannot have any kind of idea what is there inside.
So I just keep my fingers crossed and order my fish. Aarti?
Just a shout out to two organizations in India which are actually looking at what fish are good to eat in what season. This is more from a fish point of view, not so much the bioaccumulation and the contamination, but that also in-season fish and know your fish. Both these people, they monitor, and if it's the breeding time of a particular fish, etc., they say that's not the time to consume it, and so on. So every month, I think they release what fish you can eat and cannot eat. So Prem, for people like you, that might be a good resource to check. They do also talk about mercury contamination and things like that, which is why you should not maybe have some fish, depending upon what and so on. They're quite good with they're both scientific organizations. They're offshoots of scientific organizations. So they're both extremely reliable in terms of their, and then scientific in terms of their recommendations. So there's that. So Professor, I had a question. You were talking about nurdles, and a few years ago in Sri Lanka, there was again contamination through nurdles. Was there long-term monitoring, or has there been monitoring over the years done there to see what has happened to the ecosystems there because of the nurdles?
Yeah, it's only 2 years now, I think. Then, they are fortunately for the research part of that, the Sri Lanka had a lot of international collaborations to monitor that the impacts, and that is actually an ongoing research now. And we are yet to hear the research outputs because long-term monitoring means we need some time to see the bioaccumulation, see the amount of magnification that's happening, etc. So we have to wait, but there are good research, not within Sri Lanka alone, but there are a lot of international collaboration happening just for monitoring process.
And do we also have potential for international collaborations to monitor what's going on now?
Yes, there are. But then problem is that in India is that each organization has its own research agenda. and then they do with their own agenda. But what I suggested to the government again, but they are now on to that, is to have a consortium rather than every department going into this business. But they can have a consortium and they can be assigned with specific tasks because it's a huge ecosystem. It's none of the organization alone cannot have a holistic study. So what
Right.
we can do is that, based on their expertise and region where they are present, they can share the work, so that will be more and more holistic, and that the people will have an idea about the actual research output. That is what is needed now.
So I wanted to actually just broaden the discussion a little bit to go away from the immediate problem, but kind of stay in the same ballpark, but a little bit kind of pull out to ask a question about the Kerala coast, and what effects are we seeing both on the ecosystem and on livelihoods of, say, rise in sea temperature, sorry, not sea level, sea temperature, and or sediment flows and things like that.
Yeah, well, it's a multifarious things, and the issues are much more complicated here. For example, every year, for the last, and not only last year, but for the last few years, there are a lot of issues happening in the marine system. And one, of course, it's heating up, and there's quite a lot of depressions happening. And the seagoing days are coming down for the fishermen. Last year, it was almost 50 days were lost. That means 50 days there was warning not to go into the ocean. And that is because of the climate change and related issues. And then there are issues with sea erosion, and many of the coastal villages are inundated. Even now that's happening. And because of the unscientific developmental activities happening here. And then there is an issue of harmful algal bloom at some places, and there are some issues of jellyfish blooms at some places where they are getting into the fishermen's nets, etc. So the issues there are different, and along with that, there is another issue of declining resources in some cases. That means the fishermen in Kerala are faced with a lot of issues which ultimately impact their livelihood. So that's happening.
So when you say declining resources, what resources are you talking about?
Yeah, primarily, the majority of the fishing in Kerala happens within 50 meters depth. Okay. And where majority of the traditional fishermen also concentrate their activities, etc. There, the resources are declining, especially the very common resources which is available to them. For example, we can speak about the oil sardine. Oil sardine was one of the
Fish
major
resources. Got it.
fish resources. And oil sardine, of course, now the stock is actually coming up, but a few years the stock was declining like anything, because some years it contribute up to 15% of the total marine fish catch in India. One species, oil sardine. And their decline is connected with the global changes, including the El Nino and the temperature changes and shift in the sea surface temperature pattern, etc. And in addition, we have a very unique phenomena happening in Indian Ocean called oxygen minimum zones. Oxygen minimum zones appear in some of the area primarily because of the heating up. The Arabian Sea is heating up due to climate change. So all these are correlated things. And also the species patterns are changing. It is related with the climate change, and also, the change in the fishing practices, which selectively remove certain kind of species, especially larger species. So all these things happens, but overall, if you look at the statistics, there is no much drop in the marine fish catch. And this is happening primarily because the fishermen go into the outer seas now. No, they have very good efficient Chinese engines, and even the traditional fisher with outboard engine, they go up to 100 meters depth and fish. So that means they are venturing into the new fishing grounds, and that keeps the
catch numbers,
total catch in relatively in equilibrium.
Correct.
So that is what we are not actually analyzing. Okay. So that is why it is not felt as such, because total catch, if you look, it's not dropping, considerably, but the fishing grounds are expanding. That contributes to the fishery resources. And one
So
more
when
thing.
you say fishing grounds are expanding, that also then must be affecting the fishermen in the sense that they have more fuel to spend. I
Yes.
mean, they have to do all of that, right? To go
Yeah, yeah.
time spent out fishing and
Yeah, good question. But that is another issue. Good that you asked. See, the issue is that they are spending more fuel, and they're going into the larger areas. But sometimes they get good catches, and sometimes very little. And sometimes many of the fishermen whom I know, they complain that they are not getting the fuel charges back. So that will happen. That is also there. And then the amount of labor, the energy efficiency is something related with climate change. The energy efficiency is also coming down, primarily because they have to spend more fuel, because sea is very rough. Every time sea is rough because of the climate change, they have the energy efficiency comes down, and that also contribute to the carbon footprint of the system.
yeah. Are you guys seeing a drop in fishery? How can I say this? In people opting for fishing as a livelihood in the younger generation?
That is a very serious complaint, not an opinion by the senior fishers. And one of the very pertinent change which you can see in the fishing sector here is that the migrants. And even in the fishing sector, there are a lot of migrants here. Once trawlers never used to have any kind of people outside Kerala or outside every state. They have their own fisher folk going in the deep sea trawlers, which stay in the ocean for 10-15 days sometimes. And now it's all the people from the Bengal or Odisha and things like that. So that means
actually, when we had come, when Prem and I had traveled in 2019 along the coast, right from Kanyakumari up towards just north of Trivandrum and back. We did that several times. We had gone to one of the jetties, and there we had seen people on these trawlers who had never seen the ocean or the sea before. And they were working on the trawlers. So yes, I hear you about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and
there's
also it
no
has a
outlet
very it sets another context to think. For example, how the sustainability of the resources was achieved in the earlier times. The people know the ocean, people know the resources, people know the breeding season of the fish where they try to avoid them, because they want sustenance in order to get it in the next season as well. Now the problem is that the boat belongs to somebody else, and the so-called capitalist, and then they employ people from the migrant people there, and the only they are given a target also. Okay, whatever is there, you bring them back, and then if everything they are bringing back, it is a demand. Because every raw material, every raw fish, even decayed fish here are in demand. Because
yeah, we
yeah,
saw
yeah,
piles and piles of those
yes, and
trash fish
yeah,
and
yeah.
whatnot.
All these trash fishes ultimately go to the fish meal,
Fish meal.
Fish meal,
meal
yes,
for fish
exactly.
meal. Yes.
Yeah. So what and I'll stop after this last question, but what do you think is the future of fishing and the Kerala coast? Two different things. Fishing along the Kerala coast and the Kerala coast itself. Where do you see these two going?
Well, I still believe that ocean has a capacity to for resilience. But only thing is, you give the time for the ocean to come back with all this kind of normal health. And there, what we need definitely is to have some kind of control over the inputs. The inputs in the sense, one is the number of fishing vessels. Always there's a larger discussion about controlling the number of vessels in operations based on the carrying capacity and the resource availability. That is one. And the government has taken some initiatives in that. And second, although we say that we have a monsoon trawl ban, the ban is only for the trawl nets. But the ring scenes still operate. Hook and line, definitely no issue because it's selective fishing. But the ring scenes are with very small mesh size, and they all bring in huge amount of young fish. So that means closed season means it should be a closed season. You allow the hook and line to operate, and otherwise larger intensive fishing. And then there is also a discussion among the fishery scientists to break these fishing holidays into two seasons, because all the fishes are not breeding in the southwest monsoon season. So some breeding in the other season as well. So if you can actually shift or restrict fishing in both the seasons, probably we have to experiment and see how it happens. So that means you should have some kind of control in the input system, and also some kind of regulation in fishing areas, so that some kind of resilience will happen. And that is what is experimented in many parts of the world. And in many Western countries where there is some kind of sustainability happening, is primarily because of the number of marine protected areas. In our area, for example, you look at the marine protected areas in India, it's all coral reef based, where there is no much fishing. So intensively fished areas are not under protection. So because these marine protected areas are the areas which ultimately release the young ones to the surroundings as well. So all these things are connected. So at least in some of the areas, we should have close season, some kind of marine protected areas, some kind of regulation, the input regulations, and all these things will ultimately help. And this will come, when there is a sharp decline in the resources. Throughout the world that happened, and then the people will start realizing that. And there are in some islands, there are self-imposed kind of restrictions, and all these things will come when there is a decline in the resource. And we hope that ultimately, when the resources come down, the people will and the government will strongly think towards these lines.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
particularly
when I talked about the
because
coast, sorry, Prem, one last thing.
yeah,
When I talked about the coast, I meant also about the hard structures, the
Yeah,
rampant
yards,
building of
yeah,
hard structures
yes,
all
yes.
along.
And I think for hard structures, I think the time is we lost the time. There was a good time in which we could have planned for alternatives, but now the problem is that whatever beach which is left behind, they bear all the pressures. So that means we are going to have a rough time ahead in keeping our beach intact.
Yeah. Sorry, Prem, yours.
No, I'm good. I was just riffing off of something that Professor Vijay said, but I'm pretty much done. I mean, the point I was making was for Kerala, fishing, fish exports, all of that is one of the top three revenue generators. So they probably feel the pinch sooner than later in any case.
Yeah.
So thank you, Professor. It's so good
Yeah.
of you to take the time and speak to us. Hopefully, we'll stay in touch, because I mean, this is not going to end overnight. It's a developing story. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for the conversation.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank
bye.
you. Bye-bye. Okay, let's do this. So, Adi, we have these deadlines that have been fixed: June end for something or the other, July 3rd for cleaning up the mess and all of that. But listening to Dr. Biju Kumar, the thing you take away is that cleaning up this mess is not as easy as it sounds when officials talk about it in terms of procedure and deadlines and things like that. Firstly, it's not that easily cleaned, and secondly, this is not a very short-term operation. The debris is not just on the surface, it's also under the sea, etc., etc. It has long-term consequences. All of that is what uh, Dr. Biju Kumar was talking about. And he also made the point that this whole process is going to be exacerbated by the fact that we are right in the middle of the monsoon season, when the Arabian Sea is at its most volatile. What did you make of it? There are some things that he talked about. Maybe you could provide more context on things like nurdles and upwelling and.
Yeah, I think I'm not an expert on this or anything by far, but this is an upwelling region, which I think we mentioned earlier. It's one of five, and highly productive. And this upwelling is basically the cold waters rising up, and because of the currents and so on, and it happens mostly during this monsoon season, and they're very strong during the season, and it's very good for the fish, and also they depend upon this upwelling. as well as the fact that now imagine if you have something sitting at 50 meters down on the seabed, and you have an upwelling coming up from that from those depths, and you have toxins floating around, or you have oil floating around or leaking, and this thing is going to get dispersed given the roiling of the seas at this time. It's going to get dispersed and into uh, rich waters which are rich with marine life, especially at this time. We mentioned that this is breeding time for fish. So imagine that. And imagine then these toxins getting into all these marine organisms, not just fish. Think of even phytoplankton, think of zooplankton, think of these tiny creatures. And whether it's oil, and again, it remains to be seen what'll happen to the oil. At this point, they say that the oil slick is contained, and it's only from the engine. Now, if the heavy fuel oil starts leaking, and they're not able to contain that, that's going to settle. Those are heavy drops of oil which will settle onto the lower regions and onto creatures and so on. It's a longer term issue. Then you're going to see effects in the ecosystem for far longer than whatever 13th of July or whatever it is that the cleanup date is. Also, these nurdles, right? These plastic things, they have toxins like bisphenols, which Professor mentioned as well, which are endocrine disruptors and very, very bad for even humans and children. When it bioaccumulates in us, we eat the fish which eat other fish which eat things which eat this, probably. So it's accumulating up the food chain, and those are known carcinogens. Those are known hormone disruptors. And so while we might say, or we might think that it's cleanupable when it washes up on the beach, what happens to those that don't wash up, that aren't cleaned up, and that get into the system? Professor Biju Kumar did mention that there are no coral reefs close to here, but imagine it going in the system and going to coral reefs and so on. So I just feel that we have laws, we have all these things, we have maybe the will to clean up the system and so on. But what remains in the ecosystem, what gets into the ecosystem as chemicals and stays in these ecosystems as these creatures consume them, is a much longer I feel it has far-reaching proportions. These kinds of things. It's not the knock-on effects are far more. And I think he makes a good point where he says that it is a biodiverse region, and in this region, to have this kind of stuff happen at this time, all these three things, um, it's not good news if things leak. Now, of course, the jury's out on how many containers, what happened, what's leaked and what's not leaked. But given the fact that it's still sitting on the ocean bed, and we don't even have the full manifest of what's there in each of these containers. So I just don't think it sounds very good. I think more than that, also the fact that this can happen again and again,
Yeah.
And these guys, the fishermen, seem to be hit from all directions. There's this that's happening, the fact that they're already losing fish. The fishing grounds are being depleted for many reasons. There's the sea level temperatures are rising. And then, of course, they have the whole disappearing beaches, which we talked about, which is also talked about in Marginlands. It begs the question about, are we thinking about all sections of society when we think about these things and when we discuss these things? And who speaks for them? And, do they have a seat at the table when these things are being fought for and discussed? And I think it's very important Um, we did hear from Janet Cletus, right? Which
Yeah.
is really nice. What do you make of what she says?
So, in the first place, that's a good point about who's speaking for the fishermen, because the fishing industry is one of the major industries in Kerala, and it's also a huge employment generator because um, the figures that you get from the government and from fishing related organizations are that around 11 lakh people are engaged in the fishing industry. But if you remember the time that we spent on the beaches, there's far more to it than that, right? I mean, the fishermen come in, you have their wives and other women who are so there is an auctioneer who's doing that work. These women are there. You remember there was this time when we tried to get an auto to go back to where we wanted to
Yes,
go,
yes,
and we
yes.
couldn't get it because all of them are booked by the
By
fisher
these
people.
people.
So you
Yes,
have the
yes.
transport thing, then you have the wholesalers at that end who buy it from these women. Then you have the retail. It's an enormous chain, and if you disrupt the starting point of the chain, which is no fishing, then the ramifications go right up the chain, right? So that webinar that you were talking about, that was on Friday. It was the Friends of Earth who organized it, right?
Friends of Earth facilitated it.
Yeah.
Delhi Solidarity Forum, I think, or something like that, organized it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Janet Cletus, one, like she said on the call, and she was such a beautiful speaker. One of the things that she said on the call was that I make a living out of this as well. She buys
Mm,
fish, she
mm,
transports it to market. She says, my work is gone. I haven't
mm,
been able to do any work. She's
mm.
also the district secretary of the Thiruvananthapuram branch of what is called the Kerala Swatantra Malsya Tozhilali Federation. Translated into English, that is the Kerala Independent Fish Workers Federation. There were a couple of things that she talked about that struck me as being crucial to understanding what's going on. One of the things, obviously, she said she lives 20 meters from the sea, and that right in front of her home, there are pellets
Yeah.
uh, pervading that particular stretch of the beach.
Yeah.
She said that it is migrant workers working with thieves. No matter how many times I hear it or how many times I talk about it, it baffles me. Migrant workers are going around picking up sand in their hands, sieving it, taking these plastic pellets and piling it up for
On the
somebody,
beach itself. Yeah.
yeah, on the beach itself for somebody to collect. And that leads to my mind, the most important point that she made, which is that this is the time when the spring tides bring in large amounts of sand.
Yeah.
And she said that the pellets on the beach are being covered by the sand, which means you're not going to be able to retrieve them. You're talking of, oh,
Yeah.
we'll clean up, but you're not going to be able to clean up, is the point that she was talking about.
Yeah.
Which
Clean up, and
means
also, when it gets buried in the sand, there are creatures in the sand, there are crabs, there are all
yeah,
these things which filter what looks like to them
food.
pieces of probably sand particles for material, and they're going to be all ingesting this. And I don't know, we'll have to talk to some biologists to find out what exactly happens. But I can just imagine what's happening when these kinds of things are getting buried in the sand. It reminds me also of the oil that got buried in Sundarbans or
Yes.
mudflats, right? Just
Yeah. So that was Janet Cletus. And to sort of expand the view from the point of view of the fishing industry, we did speak to Dr. Grinson George, who's the director of the Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute. He was actually earlier head of the Marine Biodiversity Institute at CMFRI. So he brings both points of view to the table. So let's hear from Dr. George. Thank you for giving us the time in the middle of everything that is happening around there. We wanted to start with a very basic question. The MSC Elsa 3 was reportedly carrying hazardous materials, including calcium carbide, marine fuels, etc. In your estimations of what are the immediate and long-term ecological risks that are posed by this to the Arabian Sea ecosystem? And a related question is, how would the oil spill and the chemical leakage affect sensitive marine species, particularly because this is the monsoon season, which is critical for pelagic fish breeding?
Okay. First thing is like when a mishap is happening, we are first concerned about the people who are involved in this mishap. So the Coast Guard was alerted and they saved all the people. So that's a great
Right.
relief. But
Yeah.
at the same time, we were worried about the containers which were on board. Comparatively, this is a small feeder vessel which was traveling very close to the coastal area but away from the territorial waters of Kerala. But once this mishap happened, the forecasts on the hydrodynamics and the physical powers that are governing that time clearly indicated that this will transmit most of the materials towards the Kerala coast, that too, the southwest coast of Kerala. Basically, some midward around Alappuzha towards the southern Thiruvananthapuram district. So, as expected, the predictions came close to 80 to 90% accuracy. Like most of these containers, they were floating towards this side. But later we could see like this started taking a turn, and some of these things started reaching the east coast of India also. Tamil Nadu also clearly indicated that some of the materials have reached their coast also. What is the immediate impact? Since inclement weather was running, uh, the small scale fishing which was active during this particular point of time, they were stopped from fishing activities because small fishing vessels, they cannot sustain containers floating, and they may have some risks, and the weather was also inclement, so a ban was a statutory ban was introduced. So this was around 20 nautical miles, there was no fishing happening. Then this really affected the small scale fishing industry, which otherwise is the right time for them, because in another week we will have the mechanized vessels completely banned for fishing. As you mentioned, this is the physiologically active period for small pelagic fishes where their breeding happens. So the mechanized vessels will not be operating at this point of time. So at that time, the small scale fishers, they make a better profit out of the activities what they are doing. But somehow that got stalled in these states, in these coastal districts. But in the northern part of Kerala, where fishing was permitted, those places also, whatever fish was coming into the coastal area, there was a serious concern among the people that, okay, this fish also might have been contaminated, so we need not consume this fish. So despite the fact that the supply was very less, the market price did not rise. People started depending on alternate goods, it seems. But a detailed economic analysis needs to be made how the alternate goods, for example, the chicken price or other prices, whether it increased or egg price, it increased during this particular point of time just because of this issue. Whether fish eaters started moving from fish to other protein sources. So government of Kerala definitely will be initiating that effort because they wanted to see like how to compensate the small scale fishes. Small scale fishes definitely they were affected. They gave a series of petitions on which the government acted, and government has given a small relief to the people who are involved in small scale fishing. So a small compensatory package has been announced. Now, as a short-term or immediate impact, this is the issue of small-scale fishing. The issues affecting the monsoon tourism, what used to happen in the Kerala coast, that also became a standstill. As such, this is not a very strongly predominant tourism season, but Kerala is having monsoon tourism also. Some people come for monsoon tourism related activity that also had a hit. So people didn't want to come to a place when the waters are troubled. So that also happened. So tourism is affected, small scale fishing is affected. Many of the locations where people were habiting, containers came. Some of the materials which were present in the containers, they started getting scattered all along the beaches. So these problems still exist. For example, the plastic nodules which came to the close to the coastal areas, it's not easy to remove them unless and until a joint effort or an incentivized effort is happening. Joint effort in the sense like local citizens, local people volunteering themselves to remove this in the way possible, because we cannot use serious mechanical equipment to remove this. But when local people are involved, doing it voluntarily, it is not going to be very easy. So people may look for some incentives to take it. So there should be effort from the government or non-governmental side to incentivize such activities. These things can be collected and look for other venues where this can be reprocessed and made into some required products which can be sold in the market also. Such activities are happening otherwise also for plastic in the coastal waters. Now coming into the oil spill was mostly contained at the source itself. Because whenever there was slight spillage, the spillage was not in a great volume because it was a feeder ship, and whatever refined oil which came, I think they might have used their own boom protection mechanisms to contain it at the source itself and remove it. And with the type of weather conditions prevailing, with the activities, physical activities, most of them might have got evaporated also. There is a possibility like that. So yeah, along the coastal areas, we did not see any oil spill related issues, but there are still oil remaining inside the vessel because the vessel is down there and containers are down there. We have to really ascertain like how much quantity was loaded in the ship, how much remains in the containers, how much got spilled into the sea. That we should know. How it is going to affect the ecological sensitive ecosystems. Whether there are reports that it may go to the Lakshadweep Islands, which is having coral reefs. It can come to the coastal waters of Kerala. Already it came to coastal waters of Kerala, which are going to get affected. If we see like sedentary organisms can get affected, if it's in a major form, it can get smothered over this ecologically sensitive areas where mussels are there, where clams are there, where seagrasses are there, seaweeds are there, where there are soft corals, and if it is having a possibility of going to the Lakshadweep archipelago, it can smother some of the corals. These were the type of dimensions in which people were speaking. But we can ascertain all these things only if we know the amount of material which is going to reach these systems. Unless and until we scientifically know how much material is reaching these systems, it's going to be a difficult task to ascertain the long-term impacts. If you look into earlier studies where oil spillages happened when crude oil leakage was there, the signals were clearly indicating that up to 3 to 4 still predominant in sensitive ecosystems such as mangroves. So in mangroves stored carbon, the impact of such hydrocarbon presence because of oil spills were even observed after 3 to 4 years.
Sir, you mentioned just now that we still don't have adequate information about how much of oil or how much of other chemicals, etc., and that is required. Now, I remember reading that CMFRI, in collaboration with INCOIS, is launching a field study on the fallout of this incident. Could you possibly share some details about the scope of the study and what is hoped to be learned from the study, sir?
International Center for Ocean Information Services, it's a institute under the Ministry of Earth Sciences. They are giving operational advisories. To develop operational advisories and validate such advisories, research institutes like CMFRI support them. So yeah, the first concern of INCOIS was to see like the forecast which they made, whether it is really happening in the field. So they wanted to ascertain if they told like the containers will come at this particular location, or the oil spill, if it is happening, it will be present in certain location. They wanted to really track the movement of such particles. That was their prime aim. Our primary interest was like even though the quantity of the substances which was released into the sea is comparatively less, whether this is creating any impact on the coastal water quality. So the first evidence of such changes in coastal water quality is reported in the form of fish kills, but no fish kills occurred. That means the amount of or the quantity of the material which leached into the sea is comparatively much less than expected. If it is there, definitely there would have been, at least at the source or other locations, there would have been reports of fish kills, which never happened. So we can feel that the quantity released is comparatively on a much lower scale, which got buffered into system. Now coming into other raw materials which don't get mingled with the seawater or which don't get dissipated from the seawater. For example, plastics. the cotton raw material containers and all those things. They will be definitely washed ashore or will be remaining in the water column where they got dispersed. So this also we are still yet to get a concrete idea on how much got dispersed into the sea and how much got washed ashore. For that purpose, what the Kerala State Disaster Management Authority is trying is like they wanted to see like from the DG shipping they will get the information on how much is the loaded material, and out of the loaded material how much could be retrieved, how much sank, and how much got detached from the vessels and moved away. So that approximately will give the idea on the quantity of the materials got released into the seawater. So if this quantity is getting released into seawater, what is going to be the concentration of this when it get dispersed all over? So in general, when it comes to refined oil, most of it gets evaporated, and I don't think like that is going to create a major problem. But otherwise, we are worried about other raw materials like plastics and cotton containers. Then they were telling about a tire solvent which was available in the container, the calcium carbide which was available in the container, but we are yet to see the traces of it in the coastal waters. But at the same time, it's like we cannot make sampling all over the ocean. We can only decide on the input material which came into the oceans and how much we could ascertain they are going to create a problem for the coastal waters and coastal ecosystem.
I was just going to ask, sir, the heavy fuel oil, the one which the ship was probably carrying in its hull, it's not released. It has not come into the system. But is there any way
Yes.
to retrieve it yet, or get it out of the marine systems at all?
Basically, when this happened, it was completely controlled by the Disaster Management Authority and the Coast Guard. So it is the right way to do it also, because they are the right experts. Everyone going into that particular location, definitely as scientists, we will be interested to get the samples from that location. But what we can ask is like if things are under their control, they can provide some samples to us. At least give us information on what is getting leaked. But technically speaking, there are mechanisms by which they can retrieve whatever is, because the depth is not so much. They can retrieve that fuel what is trapped in the ship also. That is a possibility. So if they can remove it, it is not going to pose a big danger. But if still there is a good volume and if it is getting leaked to the marine environment, that can create at least problem for certain days for some of the organisms which are in the vicinity. That's a possibility.
How can you give us a sense of what depth this thing is at? Where is it sunk to? How deep was the seabed at this point?
I don't have the information right away with me, but it is available.
Okay, I'll find it. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Sir, from CMFRI's perspective, what improvements in maritime regulations and even in monitoring do you think is necessary to prevent these kind of incidents in the future? Is it even possible to prevent them? And if so, I mean, what do we need to do?
Okay, the navigation through the marine channels are profitable compared to other movements. So this maritime navigation will continue. And because it's going to be profitable and it's not creating much problem in general compared to the terrestrial transport. But for example, now we are seeing the plastic nodules. If for plastic nodules, they are required as a raw material for producing plastic material, I feel like the countries who want to make those plastic materials, they should have their own raw materials synthesized at their own sites. Unless and until if it is going to create a hazardous issue for the ecologically sensitive ecosystems, the MARPOL should have initiatives in which they can stop the navigation of such materials which can be generated by the countries themselves. Now, I feel like when the world is divided in economic terms, the people who are rich and smart, they will pump such activities to countries which are not rich and smart. And these countries go on making such materials and it will get transported to another country for making the goods. And the final product only will be reaching the destination. So let us see like if a particular product has to reach a destination, definitely there can be mechanisms in which we can at least prioritize some of the things which need not be done in different countries, and we should not promote the navigation of such things. That can come up with a levy fee or something which can be distributed among the coastal community and related people who are suffering with such incidences. That can be one mechanism what we can do it. I told that if you have to remove the nodules, there should be some incentivization for such
Right.
activities. If we can generate a corpus fund based on such materials which are creating damage, this corpus fund can be utilized globally for such accidents and making the ecosystem cleaner using these funds. That can be one possibility. That can be one addition what we can do. Second thing is like when we are planning uh, big projects where shipping is going to or maritime navigation is going to make a big traffic in a particular area, we should try to see like how good we can make ship channels in such a way that we can avoid threats to ecologically sensitive areas. There should be ship paths which should be away from ecologically sensitive areas. So it all depends on a balance. Like one side we want economic development, other side we want environmental protection. But it should be a good semblance and good balance by which we will be doing this act. So the coastal community will get enough developmental possibilities. At the same time, the ecological sensitive areas remains conserved or protected.
And you're suggesting that this fund should be basically contributed to by the countries that are responsible for this?
No, not only responsible for this. We should not worry about the accident alone. When a particular product is navigated through shipping channels and there are adequate profit involved in this, let us make sure that a percentage of the profit involved in navigating such things from one place to another place, it should be utilized for activities where such accidents are involved. Accidents can happen because of several reasons. It may not be because of the problem of navigation. It can be because of the inclement weather or something happened at a particular point of time. That's why we call it as an accident. So it should not be the person who alone gets involved in the accident, but let us take in a way like, okay, if plastic is creating problem, if plastic is getting transported from one location to another location, whoever stakeholder is getting benefited in the entire process, there should be a levy on that. That levy can form a corpus fund, and such corpus funds, then when large volume of such materials are transferred and a very small percentage is levied upon all those activities, it will become a major corpus fund. Such funds can be utilized for supporting the victims who are suffering from such accidents.
Right. Arti, if you have nothing else, I have a
I just
overall
have
question to
I
ask.
just had
But
one
yeah.
question. In the last 4 years, this has happened once with near Colombo. This has happened now near Trivandrum. These two ports, basically. And I mean, at least the Trivandrum port wants to be like a, Singapore or whatever. So is there anything that we can learn from how Singapore does business, or are all the ports pretty much the same when it comes to this kind of risk? When it
I am not the right person to comment on that. I am not sure about the type of maritime security advance to be made in different ports and how Singapore is different from Vizhinjam. I am not sure. But I feel like in general, people will not be ready to take any risk. So the people who are doing the navigation business, they will want to ensure that the vessels in which they are operating, the insurance company who are giving insurances also want to ascertain that the ship is not going to sink and they need not pay heavy insurance on such accidents. So I think the security measures would have been definitely taken care of, but such incidents can happen. But if we want to see that we are also becoming number one in all global standards, let's see like whether we are missing something in some of our activities, we can definitely get improvements done in all those places where we need improvements. That's a possibility. Definitely, the port authorities should be looking on those aspects also. And I am not an expert to comment on that.
No, that's fair. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you. One final question, Dr. George, and this goes directly to CMFRI's overall activities, not necessarily just in connection with the shipwreck. Arti and I had walked along the Trivandrum coastline, starting somewhere in Adimalathura, going all the way through Chiriyadura, Valiyadura, Bhimapalli, all of that, to document coastal erosion, which is a huge issue in that part of. In fact, it's not even up to Valiyadura; it goes all the way up to Kollam and beyond. What we noticed was, one, the disappearing beaches, two, the extent of seawalls that have come in, which basically means that fishermen are increasingly having less and less of beaches to launch from. Plus, there is all these issues of pollution, etc., etc. Could you give us a broad overview of the Kerala fishing industry from this point of view, sir? Is it under threat? What is the extent of the threat? Do you see any remedial measures? Are we looking for a broad scientist's view of fishing in Kerala?
Okay, you'll get most of these answers in one of the recent publications what we had.
Okay.
We are looking into the vulnerability of the fishermen.
Mhm.
But the study, you did not say the major villain who's acting in this, that is climate change. So if you say about whether the climate change is affecting the people, 100% it is affecting the people. Simafare is the institution which is involved in assessing the number of trips fishermen are making into the sea and the produce they bring from the sea to the land in the form of landings, fish landings.
Yeah.
So we know what is the effort they are doing and how much production they make out of this effort. So when we know these things over the last few decades, if you compare the number of working days the fishermen are involved in doing fishing and related activities, previously had it been more than 200 days in a calendar year, now it is close to 100 days in a calendar year, almost 50%, close to 50% reduction is there. One thing is okay, now inclement weather is there, shipwreck is happening. We easily bring a statutory warning and tell that, okay, fishing is bad. But it is affecting the number of employable working days for a active small scale fishermen, and they are all doing subsistence or small scale fishing, so their fishing days are getting affected. That is one reason. With the increasing temperature or the changes in shoreline or the increasing sea surface level, another issue what is happening is the increase in microbial load in the coastal waters. When the microbial load is increasing in the coastal waters for different reasons what I told, surveys clearly indicate that the fishermen still lose around 10 to 15% of their working days only for water associated diseases. We also face this. We travel from one location to another location and we find that, okay, our gastrointestinal tract is not behaving the right way. We also face it. We think that, okay, it may be because of food. We blame everything on the food, the type of changed cuisines. But we are not really worried on the changes in the microbial flora and other fauna in the aquatic ecosystems. It's changing rapidly over a period of time. There is a remarkable change in the microbial load. This is creating problems of water-associated diseases in the coastal communities. It is on an increasing scale. So when that is also increasing, they are losing working days. So definitely they are hit by the villain called climate change. It's creating a lot of impacts. And if you look into the people who are really suffering along the globe, I would say the northern Indian Ocean is really suffering because northern Indian Ocean is just like a pond if you compare to Pacific and Atlantic, because we have the Asian continent sitting on top of India and no connection to the northern side. At the same time, when extreme events like El Nino and others happen, we have additional heat loads getting transferred from these places, and we have additional thermal gain that happens with a lag of 4 to 6 months. El Nino happens somewhere in December, and during the summer we get additional after 4 to 6 months in April, May, June. We get additional heats coming here. When Indian Ocean dipole is also active, sometimes we face that the southwest coast of India is facing marine heat waves to the tune of 120 to 150 days at a stretch, one single event. We were earlier telling the frequency also will increase, intensity also will increase. Now we are not telling the frequency because if 150 days, one single event is capturing, the frequency cannot increase further in a calendar year. So the number of days, the duration is increasing and the intensity also is increasing with respect to marine heat waves. Such incidents are going to create more havoc in this region. And I am not a person to really comment on the marine structures what are coming in, the infrastructures and how it is causing coastal erosion. Definitely the marine structures when it is forming in a particular location, that can create some changes to the hydrodynamics and it can affect other places also. So the people who are involved in structural engineering, they will be able to give a better answer for that. But sea level rise and coastal erosion, it's a certainty, and it is affecting the vulnerability of the coastal population. And our studies clearly prove that. I can send that paper along
Yes,
if you want
please.
to see that. Yeah.
Yes, please. And one other question, when you were talking about, we're talking about erosion, we're talking about artisanal fishermen being affected and stuff like that. Shore scene fishing, has that basically ground to a halt with all these plastic nodules now coming on shore with this mishap especially?
Mm. Yes, all scening activities will have an issue in the locations where the nodules are there. But what I would say is like, let us take that incentivization scheme to these people.
Yeah.
Let us give some money. If they are scening and they're getting some plastics, let us give some price for the plastics which they are falling from the sea back to the land. And let us develop a circular economy in which these plastics which are retrieved from the sea can be used to develop some products. It is very easy to say like, okay, we should use recyclable plastics. But even when we discuss such things among the elite community, which are so-called academically brilliant and resource-wise rich, they also don't want to spend costly recyclable plastic products. I will tell a simple example. A school children's shoe, which Tata is making from recyclable plastic, it may cost around 1,500 to 1,800 rupees. But if you go a average or medium-sized brand shoes for the school kid will cost only 300 to 350 rupees. We can see the price difference. So who is going to pay this? People, when it comes to money, they will become penny wise. So they don't want to spend money on all those activities. But all the time we will say that, okay, we are concerned with environment. But this concern should come by adequately paying to those people who are putting effort in these areas. So let us say that, proudly say that we spend money and we use such plastic products which are recycled. We have pumped enough plastic into the sea. So let us incentivize the activities by allowing fishermen or people who are involved in fishing and related activities, be it coastal beach scening or any scening activities or any fishing activities. If they get some plastics, let us allow them to bring this plastics. Let them get some money incentivized so that they will continue bringing these things. And these plastics which are reaching the landing centers, they should have some market. Let it go to some economic activities because some products will come out of these activities, and these products can continue contributing to the economy, so that this will become a circular economy sort of model which can find some solutions for such activities what are happening in the sea.
Arti, you had anything else?
No.
Doctor, that was a very nuanced conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Pleasure talking
Totally
with you.
appreciate
I
it.
always wanted to talk, but again, there are continuous activities happening. Sorry,
No worries. No,
I
we
troubled you.
understand. Yeah.
I wanted others to speak, but still they were also, because now the government formed, the state government, local state government, they formed 3 committees to ascertain the damage, to ascertain the fishing related issues, to ascertain the long-term impacts on ecosystem. So 3 different committees are constituted. So speaking anything on that other than being in the committee, it may not look nice. So administratively, we are not supposed to give so many details on what is happening there. But I hope there will be earnest step to the people who have lost their livelihood and the coastal people who are suffering because of these reasons, so that their life will become normal again. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you
We
so
hope
much.
so too, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sometimes we'll keep talking again. Okay, then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, so that was Dr. Crinson George. And one thing that he talks about compensation, or no, incentives for people who are collecting these nurdles also. Do you have any idea whether that's even happening? Are there any incentives given to people to collect these nurdles? It's again left to the locals and I guess
Yes.
migrant workers and stuff like that to collect and clean up these beaches, right?
So in terms of collection of nurdles and stuff like that, how the Kerala government has organized it is they've empowered the district collectors to manage their areas. So you're talking of multiple districts that are affected, right? You have Alappuzha, you have Cochin, you have Kollam, you have Thiruvananthapuram. The local collectors are doing it, and it's a very ad hoc thing. So the collectors are working with whoever is available in that area, saying, uh, pick this up and put it here, and then we'll get somebody to transport it from there and all of that. So yeah, it's ad hoc is probably the word the phrase that I'll go back to. It's not as structured as we would like to think it is.
Yeah, and earlier you asked me about this oil spill contingency plan, right?
Mhm.
Oil spill is one thing, and I can understand that that is problematic and huge. But there are other things that can spill also, like these noodles, for example.
Yeah.
Do you think an oil spill contingency plan will encompass other, I mean, if and when they do it, will encompass other things that are spilled into the ocean, like maybe toxins or noodles or uh, fly ash, all of that?
It's a damn good question. In fact, after the recording that we did with Srikala,
Mm,
um, I had messaged to thank her for giving us the time, and I asked her, "Do you have a draft copy of this oil spill resolution plan?"
mm,
She said that is with the government. It hasn't been finalized, so I can't share it.
mm.
She's promised to share it as and when it becomes
It'll be
thing. So
interesting
we'll
to
see. Yeah, but
yeah.
I would imagine not, because it doesn't talk about a pollution contingency plan, which includes all sorts of pollution. It's specific to oil.
Yeah, and that needs certain specific kinds of equipment
Correct.
and so on. So the
Y-
tendering also probably is around that,
Yeah.
very specific. That's really sad because we need to, and then that again begs the question about even, things like ships capsizing with fly ash, which is happening all over,
Yeah.
our river systems as well. Um, Okay. What do you think what do you think the fishermen what's the fisherman's point of view in all this? We heard from Janet leaders, but I know that you spoke to someone in Malayalam, so
Yeah.
I was out of that one. A boat owners association guy. What did he say?
Yeah, so that was PMR Peter, president of the Boat Owners Association. The problem was not just the fact that he was speaking in Malayalam, so we can't use it in this without a lot of subtitling and all of that. The other part of the problem was he could never tell from one moment to the next where he was going to be.
Uh,
So the day I was supposed to speak to him, he found himself in Ernakulam for a meeting, and then he
mhm,
came back late that night on Vande Bharat. He said, told me to call him next morning at 9 o'clock. He wouldn't pick up the phone. Then suddenly he called and said, "I'm sitting in a car. I'm going for a meeting. If you want to ask me something, ask me now." So, yeah. So the first thing I asked him was, Arti, about. I said, what do you see as the immediate impact? Because he represents the boat owners, broadly the big boats, but he also speaks for the catamarans and so big and
mm,
medium boat owners basically. He said the first thing that has happened is that fish prices have crashed. The reason being, people are apprehensive about the possibility of pollution. So even in a
mm,
state like Kerala, which is heavily reliant on fish for its protein, people are not buying fish. He pointed out that ministers had come and done this lunch with fish kind of thing as a public demonstration that the fish is edible. But he says nobody trusts the government. They're like, what are they hiding? And all this confusion about what actually is in the containers. You have to remember that Kerala is a very heavy newspaper reading public. So all of these things, these guys know inside out. So with all of that, they said there is no trust, despite all these outreach efforts and stuff like that. So he says that has hit the fishing industry very hard in the immediate term, because from June 9 to July 31, there is in any case a moratorium on fishing, particularly net fishing. You're only allowed to do line fishing. And that is because monsoon season, breeding,
mm,
so all of that, you're not allowed to fish during that period. So he says, bad enough there is that, and we have to budget for that. On top of that, this has come out of the blue,
mm.
which means that we've lost further fishing days. So you normally plan that during this season you will earn this much, part of which you will
Yeah,
keep in order
yeah,
to ensure that you can
yeah,
survive that
yeah,
dark period, right?
yeah.
He says that's gone. Then he said, and that is because of that immediate ban on fishing.
Mm,
So he said, it has hurt us in two ways. He said, loss of fishing days is one, and
mm,
the crash in fish prices is another. And he says, remember that our operating costs remain the same. You have to spend on petrol, diesel, maintenance, wages of the people who are manning the boat, all of that, while the income has been decimated. He said it's a very, very bad scene.
I can imagine the fact that even if they do go out to fish, the boats are probably in danger if there are these large shipping containers floating around, or, you know,
Yeah, that's not,
suspended at some point in the water column.
yeah,
With
that was,
these.
yeah, that was the most bizarre part of what he told me. I mean, the thing that I never expected. He said, "Do you realize that our boats are getting damaged?" And I said, "How?" He said, "By crashing into containers,
Yeah,
etc."
I can
So
imagine.
I was like, "Can't you see a container in front of you? I mean, you're going by the boat, right?" That is when he explained. He said, "Look, what happens is that there are certain permitted areas where we fish, typically between 20 and 40 nautical miles out, right? Now, we know those areas. We know where to go at what part of the day, what part of the season to get the best catch, etc." He said the problem is not all the containers are now on the ship. They're floating around in the bottom of the ocean or midway, depending on the weight and the contents of the thing. He says we can't see these damn things. So we are going to a place that is normally that we presume is safe. And if the containers are down on the ocean bed or close to the ocean bed, our nets are getting caught in that, they're getting snagged, they get ripped. A net costs about 3 lakh or so. He says that damage is happening all the time. Now we are apprehensive about going out to fish anyway in the few days that remain. Then he said, what also happens is some of these containers are floating close to the surface of the water, but underwater. So he says you don't see it till you get to it. And what is happening is the outboard motor gets damaged, the propeller gets damaged. He said if we lose a propeller, 11 lakh gone.
I just
So
have to say, just as a point of comparison here, what was the compensation that the fishers are being given?
$1,000. And he said
Sounds
that,
so
see,
bizarre.
he said the problem is that nobody, not the fishermen, not the authorities, know what directions these containers are moving in. That's all dependent on the tides,
Yeah,
on the strength
your
of the
current.
tides, the currents, all of that.
Yeah.
So he says, where are we supposed to go? And he made this related point. He said, look, this is happening. I mean, right now the ship itself is sunk about 14.6 nautical miles out. He says it is everybody knows that the fishing normally happens in that band that we were talking about, 20 to 40 nautical miles out.
Mm.
So he was like, how are these big shipping containers plying through this precise region where where trawlers go, catamarans go for fishing? Why did no one assess the risk to us for permitting shipping traffic through an area that is our livelihood?
Are there laws that allow or disallow hazardous cargo and shipping? Um, Maybe that's something that we can ask.
That's a very good question. We realized early on that we needed some kind of legal opinion about these things.
Mm.
So we do have that coming up. But to get back to what Peter said to me on that call, he said, look, the government is saying, and that he's talking about the Kerala government. He's saying the Kerala government is saying that it will mediate between the shipping company and the fishermen's bodies to make sure that we are adequately compensated. He said there are several questions here and one big problem. He said, first, how are you going to arrive at the amount of compensation?
Mm.
Will it account for the loss of fishing days? Will it account for the decrease in demand and therefore the much lower prices of the fish we end up catching?
Mm.
All of that, right? How are you going to calculate all of that? Secondly, he said, will it provide for the damage that has been caused to trawlers, to catamarans, to our nets, to our equipment? Those things. Then he said, the most important question is fishermen live on a day to day basis, which is a point we made earlier as well. But he made that point with a great deal of emphasis. He said, if we earn, we eat. If we don't, we don't. So, how long is this process going to take for us to expect compensation? Compensation when? When will the money reach the fishermen? And how are we supposed to survive in the interim? And he said, how do we even know that the fishing company will be willing to pay adequate compensation? This is a 28-year-old ship. It's end of life. The company doesn't care, it's gone. It gets its insurance money. What interest?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
What interest does it have? And he was talking about various conspiracy theories, which I don't want to get into, relating to insurance and all of that stuff, because I mean, we have enough problems without, coming up with all of this conspiracies and things like that. But he said, look, overall, if you think about it, he said there is erosion, there is climate change, weather is shifting constantly. For instance, he pointed out that all of May they had heavy rains. You don't have, that. You've actually done a story on the onset of monsoon. And you know how predictable it is, right? The locals tell you tomorrow at 3 o'clock the monsoon is going to come. Now it's become unpredictable.
Yeah.
He says, so we have that problem. Now we have ships crossing all over the place. We have pollution that we haven't even been able to quantify. He says, and he gave me a lot of figures. Wait a minute. He said, yeah, Kerala produces approximately 6.8 lakh metric tons of fish annually. And he said,
8 lakh metric tons. Sorry, just trying to wrap my head.
Yeah, and he said 70% of that is coming from marine fishing, not river fishing. He says it's not just us. Fishing is a significant source of revenue to the state, including foreign exchange, because a whole lot of exports happen, both dry fish and fresh fish. So he says if all of these things are not taken into consideration, if there are no adequate safeguards put into place right now, at least after the disaster, he said it's not just what we are going through now. He said the industry as a whole is going to be massively threatened in the immediate and long-term future. And he says, we've been asking these questions, we're not getting answers. I know it's in Malayalam, I wish you had heard him, because just the tone of voice, there was so much of anger and so much of distress. It's like, they're caught in a situation where they don't know what to do.
Yeah, I remember when we talked to the other Peter a few years ago, 6 years ago now, who was the NFF chairman.
Correct.
He was also vehement. There were two other people sitting in his house who were also vehement. They were all talking in Malayalam. I just could make out that they were vehement. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but it is, it's what Walter Scott said, right? This isn't fish you're buying, it's people's lives.
Yes.
And it's literally that, right? For us, we are thinking, we're thinking in disconnected terms. Those guys, like he said, you kill, you eat. You don't kill, you don't eat. And it's really hard. So does this Peter have a voice, a place at the table with the negotiators, or is this going to be done on behalf of him by someone who may not know what issues these guys face?
Yeah, so remember I told you he was heading for a meeting. He said we are being called for some of these meetings, and these meetings are basically exploratory. What is going on? What are you facing? What are your thoughts? He said, but he keeps, every time you ask him something like that, he keeps going back to the main point, saying, look, it's fine to sit across a table to discuss all these things in broad spectrum analysis and all of that. But somebody has got to provide food today. You remember, Arti, when we went to the coast, one of the things, there was this time when we were watching fish catch being offloaded. And there was this boat which managed just a handful of fish, a few fish at the bottom of its basket, and they took it to the thing. And we were asking them about, and I think it's important for people to understand this. We were asking them about how the mechanics work. And what did he say? He said, look, so the auction happens, a certain amount of money goes to the union, a certain amount of money goes to the church because that thing happens. The church takes a collection. The rest of the money is divided between the boat owner, who mostly goes on the boat itself, and the other people who are part of that boat, right? Plus, the boat gets a share, because the way they explained it is, if something happens to the boat, we need to be able to repair it. So we stock a certain amount of money in an account. So every day X amount goes in there.
Yeah.
That day, the fish that they caught, they got 235 rupees. I remember that it every time I buy fish, I think of it.
Mm,
235 rupees for 6 people, plus boat, plus church, plus auctioneer.
mm. I know
Would
in 2014, that's exactly what I saw in the Sundarbans as well. I saw two hilsa at the bottom of a hold for for a ship of 14 people crew, which already had was lax in debt because of the the new ship that they had bought. They were trying to pay it back, but no catch.
Yep.
Yeah. These guys are really living hand to mouth. They're really at beyond like the cliff of debt, and it's so. So I guess the question then comes down to who pays now? Do they get anything now? Uh, what happened here, really, right? And
Yeah. Those are the existential questions. And then there are the larger questions, right? One of the questions that you've brought up several times in offline conversations that we've had, the question of fixing responsibility, uh, the legal ramifications of this. Who has to drive the legal process? Who has to,
is there any legal recourse? I mean,
yeah,
look at the. It may not be oil slicks like Deepwater Horizon, but the blowback and the fallout and the destruction on lives, given the sheer population of people who depend upon this coast,
yes,
it's heavy.
massive, yes. So, since all these legal questions are important, we've got our next and probably the last guest. He is well versed in maritime law. He was a former judge of the Andhra Pradesh High Court, and he's now a practicing lawyer in the Supreme Court, Mr. Someyajulu. And along with that, we have what you would call an amicus curiae, I guess, a friend of the court, in this case, a friend of the two of us, Murli Neelakantan, also uh, a very well-known veteran lawyer with years of experience. And in Murli's case, also the ability to simplify complex legal equations. So let's hear from Mr. Someyajulu and from Murli Neelakantan.
Yes. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Someyajulu, we wanted to start with a very basic question. The MSC Elsa 3 is a Liberia flagged vessel owned and operated by the Mediterranean Shipping Company, which is Swiss based. Given that the ship sank in India's exclusive economic zone, what are the legal frameworks, both national and international, that govern the question of accountability? And is any of this complicated by the flag of convenience system?
The flag of convenience will not really make much of a difference here in the present case. But for now, I think the Merchant Shipping Act itself is what is governing the issue in hand.
Right.
See, once an incident occurs, a report has to be lodged.
Mm-hmm.
And the report also has to go to the central government.
Right.
The Merchant Shipping Act itself is, I think, the applicable. As soon as a shipping casualty occurs in the, a notice has to be given under Section 358A, 358, and the whole process then kicks in. An investigation is carried out, a preliminary investigation is carried out to fix the liability and to fix the owner who was responsible for the accident. Did it happen only because of, a lack of adequate care? Did it happen for reasons beyond that, etc.? Now, the investigation is being carried out by the statutory authorities in this case, namely the DG Shipping and all. A report will have to be submitted to the central government. Over and above that, there is also a provision where after the preliminary inquiry, a court, namely, although it is a magistrate who's named under Section 360 and 361, a sort of a civil inquiry will be carried out to fix the liability and to ascertain what exactly caused the accident. Today, we are not in an accident has occurred.
Right.
There is a certain amount of environmental damage, spillage, etc. But the exact cause of the accident is yet to be established. So the Merchant Shipping Act, as it exists, I think, is taking care of the situation, and a requisite statutory inquiry is being conducted. Apart from the fact that the Kerala High Court has seized the matter in appeal, and also the NGT. So therefore, once the inquiry is completed and the cause is established, the other things would then come in.
So because you're talking of the need to ascertain all the details relating to this incident, and legally ascertain, that is, I had a sort of supplementary question which broadens the conversation a little bit. The Elsa 3 has a history of inspection deficiencies. So, for example, in 2023 July, during an inspection at Tuticorin Port, 9 deficiencies, 4 of them related to crew preparedness and competency, were flagged. The ship's last inspection was in Mangalore on November 19, 2024, and it flagged 5 deficiencies. Despite all of this, the LCC holds the ELSA 3 holds a valid, what they call a safety management certificate. We're wondering, sir, what are the laws, either international or domestic, that can possibly prevent such incidents involving aging or poorly maintained vessels?
The fact that it was allowed to sail
Mm-hmm.
imply that these certificates were implied. We do not really, that is why I'm saying, Mr. Prem, in this case, on hand as on date, we do not really know what caused the accident. Whether there is a link between the so-called deficiencies that you pointed out and the actual accident, etc., is not yet established.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, in a way, jumping the gun. The fact is that she was allowed to sail. Therefore, we have to presume at this stage that all the safety certificates, all the ship certificates were intact and the concerns were addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, really come to a conclusion that what you have flagged or what you have come across in the course of your reading is the cause of the accident. The link between the two is yet to be established. Yes, but if there is a link, then other things would follow.
You're basically referring to the presumption of innocence.
Not really, yeah. See, yeah, in a way, yes. That yes, she was allowed to sail, she was allowed to leave the port, she was allowed to go out, which implies that yes, some of those issues must have been addressed.
I see. Arti?
Sir, so the NGT in late May noted that the sinking of the ELSA 3 violated several acts, environmental acts that we have: the Biodiversity Act, the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, and the environmental EPA, the Environmental Protection Act. What provisions of these acts apply, of these laws apply, and how may they be enforced against a foreign entity?
I have a serious reservation as of now if the Biodiversity Act and the Control of Pollution, Water Control Pollution Act really apply to the facts of this case. I have a different, I don't think they really apply, but then the NGT sees the matter. I don't want to say anything further. Environmental Pollution Act, yes, it applies. But then again, we will have to come back to the Merchant Shipping Act and the provisions thereunder for clearing the pollution, for liabilities, etc. So if you ask me honestly, I have my own reservations that the Biodiversity Act and the Control of Pollution, Water Pollution Act would really apply to the facts on hand.
Why would that be, sir? I mean,
when you look at the Act, they do not apply strictly in this scenario, according to me.
I see.
This was an accident at sea. So therefore, in a way, Environment Pollution Act to an extent, but not the other two, in my opinion. If you really go into what is biodiversity, what is the water pollution, what is the scheme of the Act, how it applies to all the states in India, etc., I have my own reservations. So.
But how would it apply to a foreign-owned vessel? And in
the damage caused doesn't really make a difference. Once it is even if it's a foreign-owned vessel, if it's sailing within our waters and causes the damages, it is liable under these circumstances. That doesn't make a fundamental difference.
Right. And so the NGT has issued notices to the KSPCB and Ministry of Environment and all that. What obligations do these bodies have, and how can they How can they coordinate with the international parties involved to mitigate whatever damage has been caused?
One, the international party involved, namely the owner of the ship, is already there before the court. In the sense, he is supposedly cooperating and things are happening. Because I didn't see anything adverse anywhere that he has run off or anything. Now, once you see, then you'll also have to know that there is no serious leakage of oil per se from the ship that she was carrying. Her bunkers and regular oil has not yet leaked. Obviously, I think steps would be taken to either to plug it or to remove it. What has happened is that the containers have slipped. Some of them have fallen down. Some amount of plastic has come out. Which, there are two things. Is it beyond a repairable proportion, or is it repairable and it can be salvaged? If it can be salvaged and repaired, I think the solution is right there in front of you. If it goes beyond that, then the other things should come in, subject to the overarching thing that I said. Who is liable and why did the accident happen? How did the accident happen?
So relating to that then, has there been any precedence in India of holding anybody liable for such things?
Yes, there have been some cases. Offhand, I can't rightly give you, but yes, there have been cases where people, it has happened earlier also. Oil spillages, etc. People have been faulted. But you should also know that there is something called a limitation of liability for the owners. That also would kick in. Ship owners also have something called a limitation of liability under the Merchant Shipping Act. So there would be a ceiling up to which they would be liable, unless, of course, there are exceptions where it says that. I'll just give you a limitation of liability, I think, would be in. Just a minute.
Sure.
52I. Yeah, the owner shall be entitled to limit his liability in respect of the incident. However, the owner shall not be entitled to limit his liability if it is proved that the incident causing the pollution damage occurred as a result of his personal act or omission committed or made with an intent or recklessly or etc. etc.
Here the key word would be personal.
Yeah. See, that is why, Mr. Prem, I'm coming back to the fact that the exact cause is yet to be established. If it is proved that the owner or the master was not careful enough, or the due care that was expected of him was not taken, or there was a personal act or omission committed, then the liability limitation, etc. would not have. But if the accident happens beyond, for reasons beyond all of this, there is a limitation of liability which he can enforce also. But then we also have the principle of polluter pays. That is something that is generally applicable. Polluter pays is something that would be made applicable, etc.
So since we're talking of damages, liability, etc., over the past few days, we've been talking to various people who have been involved with the fishing industry, including the Boat Owners Association president, etc. Pretty much everybody who we spoke to say that there has been significant harm to to Kerala's marine ecosystem, to the fisheries. For one, the imposing of the fishing ban came at the worst possible time because as of June 9th, there is a ban in any case for 52 days. That is for the breeding season, you're not allowed to fish. Now, this has come earlier and further limited the number of fishing days. So every time we talk to somebody who's involved in the industry, the immediate question that comes up is, who's going to compensate us? What will be the extent of compensation? How are we going to get compensation? And these people keep making the point that we survive day to day. So this could likely be a long drawn process. So the question is, sir, can either the Kerala government or the affected fish workers or both pursue compensation on their own? And if so, what are the challenges they'll face in court? Because ultimately, it's a matter of,
Mr. Prem, the cause and effect has to be established. Again, we are coming back to square one. The cause and effect. Was this ban imposed as a precautionary measure, or was this ban imposed because of the presence of a pollutant in the water? Unless that is established with certainty, the cause and effect will not be. See, it could be a preventive measure. Like the Kerala government, as a measure of caution, could have anticipated the spillage or the leakage of oil, etc., and the fish or the marine species, imbibing all of this, which in turn would pass on to a human being. Did they do it because of to prevent damage from occurring, or did they do it after the cause was established? Again, $1 million question.
Wow. So, broadly speaking, all of this is going to take a lot of time.
It will not take a lot of time per se, because these investigations do happen quickly, and it is always the central government which is always in the picture. The DG of shipping, DG shipping, everybody, etc. And today you have a good scenario where the NGT and the High Court are also seized of the matter. Therefore, there will not be much slippage per se. I think you will get some results soon.
I see. Arti?
So I have a slightly broader question. When you have, like, for example, this whole region is under the Malabar Upwelling region, MUR, one of those 5 upwellings in the whole world, which account for 25% of the fish catches in the world. So even though it's just 1% of the marine region. So it's highly biodiverse and highly productive in terms of even fisheries. Are there any legal mechanisms or any laws that can help us with just transparency or even prohibition of hazardous cargo shipping in these routes?
Madam, see, hazardous cargo, they have a rite of passage. Also, just because a cargo is per se hazardous doesn't mean it cannot be transported or moved. We can't simply ban all hazardous cargo on this.
Alternate routes or going slightly further out?
You'll also have to consider the economy. You can't just drive them away, just because you anticipate it to be hazardous. Anything is per se, electricity in your home is per se hazardous. It is the way you use them and the safety precautions that you take that matter. So you can't expect a blanket ban on movement of cargo in these areas just because it is hazardous. Because they also have a rite of passage. And cargoes have been moving across the world over the centuries.
What we are basically hearing, sir, is that there is a dichotomy. I mean, there are 2 broad aspects involved in this. One, obviously, is what the people who are at ground zero are going through and their feelings and demands, etc., which include, look, I mean, how do we survive tomorrow? And the other part is what you're saying, which is a legal point of view, which says, yeah, whatever it is, there is a process. It involves first investigation and a full thorough investigation, etc. It is not a simple matter of saying, look, you're carrying something hazardous, you can't come anywhere near our fishing zones, all of that. I'm trying to figure out, sir, how do we balance these 2, which seem to be diametrically opposed, actually?
This is an eternal conflict between growth, industry, and ecology, and everywhere. It happens. You set up a refinery in the middle of in a city. You are dealing with hazardous chemicals.
Right.
Same time, we need the, let's say, petrochemical industry. We need the petrochemicals for our movement of cargo, movement, etc. And human habitations come up close by. So this is the eternal conflict which is going on. We can't really, cut and dry, draw a line and say this is possible, this is not possible. Just a question of balancing the interests.
What about enforcement? Is our enforcement of, say, even precautionary measures or, mandatory measures of movement in eco-sensitive zones? Do we have strong
Yes, ma'am. We are fairly good. We've been monitoring them. These sort of cargoes, nuclear ships, for example, they're separate rules. Hazardous cargo, they're being monitored fairly well. Fact remains that you did not have any very serious accident of a very high nature anywhere in these areas. It is happening. They are being monitored fairly well.
Mhm.
Human lapses being what they do occur, but in overall, yes, we are doing a fairly good job.
So you make a valid legal point, and I emphasize legal because I think instinctively I'm on the side of the people who are affected, but that aside. You make a valid legal point saying that hazardous cargo cannot just be on its own just banned from being transshipped, that it is done all the time, etc., etc. I was wondering, are there legal mechanisms that exist to at least ensure transparency? Do we know that hazardous materials are being transshipped?
Yes,
For
please.
instance, the International Maritime Dangerous Goods IMDG code.
See, I'm not. See, the problem with I don't want to go into this. You look at the Merchant Shipping Act, and there are enough safeguards which are built in when you're moving hazardous cargoes to, to give adequate notice, to get them inspected, then the seaworthiness of the vessel is, then only they're allowed to go. There are enough in place. There is enough in place, according to me.
So in this present instance, the only question would be, have these safeguards been followed? So when the ship left Vizhinjam, for instance.
Go back to square one.
Why? Okay. Murli has had his
hand raised. Yeah.
I just want to make 2 points. One is, if we can ask the question, the limitation of liability is only in relation to parties to the charter, isn't it? It's not in relation to the world and REM.
Yeah. See.
So there may be something to be argued here to say the limitation of liability is not in relation to all damage to the whole world caused by the ship. And therefore, limitation of liability cannot apply to things beyond just the cargo and the charter party. It's just a question for I think about.
Liability is also for any pollution damage also. There is a limitation of liability for pollution damage also. But of course, if the accident occurred because of his personal act or omission or negligence,
exactly,
then the limitation will not kick in. But otherwise, even for pollution damages and related damages, there is that limitation.
Excellent. The second one, I think, was a question on compensation, which is how do you balance these interests? There is no reason why the government cannot pay compensation ad hoc in an interim manner to those who are affected and continue to pursue the claims against the ship and the ship owner. And subject to whatever they recover from there in due course, they will be made good for whatever compensation they've paid out. So it is not unusual in circumstances like this to say that we will pay cleanup costs, we will pay interim compensation, and we'll start with the process. To some extent, you may get the cooperation of the ship owner in it as well to say, yes, this is essential. I'm not committing any money to this, and I'm not committing that I'm liable to this, but it makes sense that it's a reasonable process to follow. And that might be one of the suggestions that could be made to the court in Kerala to say, we're going to be incurring these expenses. Please be warned that we're going to be incurring all these expenses. And so if it is held that the ship is responsible for the damage it's caused, then here's how we total up the damages and compensation. So it's a possible way of doing it. The law has provisions for it to go off and do it. So it's not an unusual process to ask for interim measures to be taken and subject to the outcome of the litigation, that whoever loses in that case will bear the costs of all of this. What do you?
I think Kerala government has already evolved some scheme and has already made some payment to the fishermen to compensate them. Over and above that, yes, sort of an interim compensation subject to final adjudication. Yes, that can be discussed.
And what the Kerala government has done is 1,000 rupees and a bag of rice, I think, as interim help, which is why, frankly, I mean, the people we spoke to who are on the ground and who are affected are like, what the hell are we supposed to do with this?
Yeah, that is more I think more a political issue than, you know,
Yes.
the efficiency of that 1,000 rupees and bag of rice is not something we can decide upon.
Correct.
It should be more for the government to take a on the ground look and, you know, boots on the ground type, send somebody and find out what actually is needed to compensate.
And maybe it will, maybe it will get easier for the government to make substantial compensation soon as the inquiry finishes, the investigation finishes. And in this case, you know, it is not a painful trial that you're likely to take years on. Many of these can conclude in months, because whatever information you need is already there. There is not a huge amount of information to be produced over a long period of time. So these investigations really don't take very much time. And perhaps it is possible for the Kerala government to say that, listen, we will hand out some 1,000 rupees. I hope it's 1,000 rupees a day and not 1,000 rupees one time. But then as soon as we get closer to understanding the cause of it and understanding what needs to be done as well to mitigate against the environmental damage, we'll have a sense of, therefore, what can be granted as compensation and what can be done for cleanup. So it's not that easy to say, you know, we've seen something and we'll take a broom and basket and go clean it up. So depending on what the cleanup process is going to be, they'll require a bit of expertise, a bit of cost estimation. And maybe at that time, in a few weeks' time, the Kerala government can come up with a plan to court and say, subject to the outcome of this, this is the cost, this is the cleanup, this is what we propose to do.
Yeah, that's great. That's what they should do, in fact, in the circumstance.
So,
the case of the bunkers leaking or the oil leaking,
It's very different.
The container, I think that has some containers have fallen down, some plastic has come ashore. I mean, a huge environmental disaster did not actually happen from what I can read. I mean, I'm not really fully on the ground.
That's true, sir. I think as far as the pollution and related issues are concerned, the oil that leaked from the ship's engine has more or less been contained, is what the chairperson of the Pollution Control Board told us. The other oil, which is in the ship's hold, has not been recovered. So that is one. Secondly, some of the containers are floating free, and most of them are supposed to be empty containers or containers that contain carried things like these plastic nurdles and things like that, which some of which have split open and inundated the coast. From all that we are hearing from talking to people both on the ground and from some of the government agencies, the questions still remaining are, what is the contents of the containers that are still inside the ship and which have to be recovered, which have to be brought to the surface and then to the shore. One peculiarity is that the High Court had asked, I don't understand in the first place why the High Court had to intervene and ask this question, but the High Court had asked for the manifest and said that the manifest needed to be published. So finally, a manifest has been published, or at least the contents have been published by the Kerala government. It includes notes on 570 containers. The ship has 640 or 43, depending on who you ask. 640 seems to be the agreed upon number. So even after the High Court's intervention, we are still finding about 60 to 70 containers short in the manifest itself. So one of the questions that arises is, what is in these containers? Can they be safely rescued? And also, because the deadline for recovery of the containers is July 3rd. So people, particularly fishermen who are familiar with the conditions, say that, look, this is not a good time for you to be doing all this because of the monsoons, because of the volatility of the ocean, etc. So they are not sanguine that this will happen within the expected deadline. Thinking back to everything that both Mr. Somayajulu and you said, so the next steps are, one, and that is beyond the cleanup and surfacing of the containers, etc. You need an inquiry The report has to be submitted, it has to be vetted, it has to come to court. The court then has to decide questions of liability.
Either the central government and or the court. Both of them have the... The contents of the report have to come out and be published.
Okay.
Okay.
Arti, did you have anything?
I just right there, in fact, right there to that thing that Mr. Soumyanjulu said. Where is the central government in all this? What role does the central government play?
Central government has a very, very crucial role. The minute a shipping casualty occurs, a report is given to them. So they are involved right from day one.
Mm-hmm.
As of now, the DG shipping would be involved in the entire thing. But overall, it is the government, central government, which would be that's how the Merchant Shipping Act works. And the central government is an integral part of the whole thing. The report is given to by the officers nominated, and they would give it to the central government.
So the central government plays the role of,
yes,
for want of a better phrase, father of the nation, the parens patriae concept.
Yeah, for want of a better phrase, yes. But this is statutory. You don't need that phrase actually, because the statute itself says the report should go to the central government.
Right. So, I mean, neither Aarti nor I are even remotely qualified to talk to lawyers about law. So it's perfectly possible that we've missed out some key points or essential questions, etc. So are there questions we should have asked that we haven't?
No. In fact, you did a very thorough job. In fact, you have more information than I do right now.
Are you?
So don't even say that for a moment.
Murli?
No, the questions yesterday and today both were excellent. I think we've covered most of it. So
yeah,
if you guys we haven't covered something, then you should ask. I think we've covered all of them.
I just had one question which doesn't need to be answered on this call, and we could just take this offline as well. You talked about the tons of conventions and those kinds of things that come into play. Have we ratified all those conventions? We are party to?
Some are ratified, some are not ratified. There are lots of issues there, which will open up another very big line of inquiry and discussion. Let's leave it at that.
And some partly ratified. So we are in compliance with some conventions in some parts, and especially limitation of liability. For example, it's all legal nuance that we claim we are. Most people in the business believe that we are not, and there are these slight differences in the way we say we comply. So international conventions and India, we have very difficult history, not just in this sector but in many sectors.
This is the problem with law. I mean, as laypersons, Aarti and I are like, okay, an accident happened, something has gone wrong. This is bad. Certain people are affected. They should be compensated. They should be cleaned up. End of story. But talking to Mr. Soumyanjulu and you, it's like, okay, it's not even the beginning of the story.
No, but
I don't think we need to.
What you're saying is the story. What you're saying is the story. It just will take 400 pages to write it out. That's all.
Okay.
We need not be so pessimistic about it, Prem, and I'm sure it will fall into place very quickly. Because these are areas where everybody is conscious. Environmental pollution is something they are serious, particularly pollution of marine life, etc. is something people take it very seriously. Whether it's the NGT or the port or people like you are interested. Because of all of this, a combination of all these factors would be addressed, and I'm sure within a short time you'll see a rainbow at the end of the tunnel, light at the end of the tunnel.
As I say, sir, aapke muh mein ghee shakkar and all that. So
not goo. Thank God.
Yeah, not goo. Sorry. Yeah.
That's Prem and Hindi. That doesn't matter. Different topic.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, particularly, Mr. Soumyanjulu, thank you so much for taking the time. I mean, not just for taking the time, but also taking the time when your health is not perfect.
It is because of Murli. I can't.
Yeah. Aarti and I treat Murli as some kind of mafia don come encyclopedia. So if we want to know something, we ask Murli. If we want something done, we tell Murli, can you please? So he says, yeah.
All this is being recorded, by the way.
Yeah.
So I will only disagree with the mafia part of it. Don agree. I'll agree.
Okay.
So I'm happy to help. I'm happy to help.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank
This
you.
has really been very enlightening and helpful for us. And of course, a lot of homework for Prem and I to do
Yeah.
to
You're
understand.
on a good topic. Please pursue it. I'm sure you can be of assistance to all these fishermen. I'm sure there'll be a light at the end of the tunnel.
And we hope so. So
Thank you
seriously.
so much.
Keep at it. Keep at it.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Murli.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
Bye. Abhi, I don't know what you made of the conversation we just had with Mr. Somayajulu and briefly with Murli Neelakantan as well. For me, the thing is, see, as lay people, we see it in very simplistic terms. Somebody polluted, identify who polluted, the polluter has to pay. End of story. Because ultimately, our focus is on the lives that are at risk, the livelihoods that are at risk, all of those things, right? And then
Biodiversity and the environment as
biodiversity,
well.
that as well. This is Marginlands podcast, which I forgot briefly.
Yeah.
But that said, the thing is, when you speak to a lawyer, what they say makes sense from a legal point of view. So
Yeah.
when they say things like there are certain conventions governing this, we have not necessarily signed up to all those conventions. They say things like it does not necessarily mean that because this happened, this person is responsible, and then we fix whatever arbitrary amount. So he said very clearly that the first process has to be a proper investigation. The report has to be submitted to the government, central government. He mentioned that it is a central government that needs to
Yes.
play point on
Immediately.
this
Yeah.
immediately.
The DG.
Yeah, and to the court.
Mm.
And he said that in parallel, there can be a civil investigation as well. That I
Yeah.
suppose is criminal liability versus a civil liability is where that is coming from. The only silver lining, which he kept repeatedly emphasizing, is he said all of this can happen fairly fast. It's not, you're not looking at a case that will drag on for 6 years and 10 years and you know the Indian court system. But what comes across from what Mr. Somayajulu in particular spoke is that there's a lot of ifs and buts to it. It's not as simple as we thought it was. So let's do this. Let's get Murli back on the call and let's get him to simplify this for us in layman's terms. What can the government? I have that one question, and you probably have other questions as well. My one question to him is, what can and should the government do at this point? Because I think that's a question that hasn't been addressed.
Yeah. What can the government, what should the government do? What can the government do? And I keep coming back to a very hairy question, which is basically in this process, do the non business players or stakeholders, which is stupid actually, because you know that is central to the business. I mean, you have it is part of the economy, but people don't see it as part of the economy. Those guys, I mean, do they have who speaks on their behalf? I just keep coming back to that. And it's is there a stake, or is there anything at stake for the government to
listen to them?
Yes, to act as if they matter, you know? Anyway, yes, I think
actually, yeah, that's a good point, because when we talk of the economy, and Mr. Somayajulu actually mentioned that point when we asked him about shipping lanes and this thing, he said, you know,
you have to think about the economy.
Yeah, you have to think about the economy. And that was the thought that I had at the same time, that we are seeing the economy in terms of big ports, big ships.
Shiny GDP, yes.
Yeah, big ships and all of that. This entire industry is the fishing boats, the fishermen, the ancillary trade, all of that. That's a huge economy as well. And like you said, who's thinking of them?
Who's thinking of them? The government pays some lip service to this blue economy thing, but I know that it's not the same as the small artisanal fishermen and their livelihood and their well-being. But given even so, these are prime fishing grounds, and it is a huge part of our economy. That is economy too.
Yeah.
And biodiversity, and their biodiversity doesn't mean, just national parks and stuff like that. Just the fact that there are fish in the water is biodiversity, and the fact that there are so many fish, and this is such an important fishing ground. Anyway, so who speaks to them, and why should we have any hope that this will even get addressed in a way that will benefit these folks?
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's call Murli back to just see if he can put it in a way that we can
wrap our heads around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
We have to do something about it. We can go back and look at what happened in Bhopal, but to a large extent, what the government did with the legislation. After that, lots of things have happened. But what the government did with the legislation to say that we will have a legislation so that we can compensate the victims pending the outcome of whatever the litigation is, and we establish hospitals, we will establish a scheme for their health, long-term understanding of the impact of it. So all of those things were done fairly quickly. So when the government said, we will take over the claims, we will establish a tribunal, all those things are showing that the government really intends to do something about it. So in that sense, government can do a lot. So in that role, if the government wants to actually do a lot, it can do a lot. And there is past precedent in this case of being able to do it. So the government can issue a scheme and say, listen, everybody who's affected by it, please lodge your claims. The government can actually send people over to assess damage, to verify those claims if necessary. So all of that can be done now and should be done now, because over time it becomes more and more difficult to do it. So having the relationship with the port, having the relationship with the carrier is all very good if together we can come up with practical, useful solutions. So again, it's what we do with those relationships. If we use those relations to cover up, then the impact is going to be terrible. That India will be seen as a soft touch nation in that sense, that we're willing to allow all of this to happen. And therefore, it's going to affect our reputation. So look at it this way. In this present case, if the port, when it released the ship, didn't actually make sure that those certificates were properly maintained, then every other port is going to say, this certificate has come from this port. We will not take it on face value. So it undermines our credibility within the system, within the global system. So if there is a fear or risk that is likely to happen in this case, and we have to respond to that and say, no, we're a good port, we're a world-class port, we do everything that is expected, and you can rely on our certificates. And if that is being questioned here, and that's the risk if we don't do a good job of it, then that is that's the pressure that can be created on the owner, the ship, the port, and the government to say we have to do the right thing. So we can, if we want to. This is this approach that the government takes to say this is an important one. It can affect our reputation as a shipping nation. It affects us. It affects the quality of the port, the reputation of the port, our regulations. And we expect that when we issue a certificate, the rest of the world will recognize it. And that's going to be affected if we don't do a good job of it. So then you have a situation where we will do a good job of it so that the rest of the world doesn't treat us with any disrespect in that sense. So it's a matter of being part of the global community and doing the thing that retains your reputation. And so there is, again, this incentive, if you want that to be the case, to say, And if there's enough, I think, outcry about it, and people write about it and highlight this issue to say, this is the consequence. It's not just a few containers. It brings credibility of the port, of our systems into question in the global arena. Then maybe people care about that.
So actually, I'm glad we got Murli back, because in his intervention, he made a point that I thought was very important, that the government not only can do something about it in two ways. One is taking this case through to its conclusion, ensuring that the people who are responsible are held responsible, they pay adequate compensation, etc. And two, you don't have to wait for all that. The government can, and in this case, this is the Kerala government. The Kerala government can just provide ad hoc compensation right now, adequate compensation right now, and then sort it out later. So it doesn't have to be, first finish the investigation, then go to court, then do this, that, and the other, which I thought was an important point. And it means that we also need to keep an eye on what the government does in the coming days and weeks. The thing is, what is increasingly apparent is that, unlike our usual podcast, this is not a one and done story. This is going to ramify in ways that I can't even think of, neither can you, and it'll ramify over time. So we're going to need to keep an eye on the developments. What is striking about the developments thus far is that the 17 days from the shipwreck, that is 17 days when you listen to this, what we're left with is more questions than answers. And the most important question actually is, just what the heck is in those containers, some of which are floating around loose in the ocean. Peter, one of the points that he had made, which I forgot to mention, was he said, look, you think that the container is sitting nicely grounded. One, it is being moved about by the waves. And two, containers are banging against each other. They had to be. They're all in a finite space, right? And these waves are moving these things around. Who knows what is going to bust loose at what point?
Yeah.
And he said, we don't even know at this point what exactly these containers have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to spring this on you. It's not something that we decided when we were going to do this, but I just thought that, people listening to this probably have a very vague idea of what Kerala's coast looks like. They've probably been to Coconut Grove, or they've been to, one of these resorts at Kovalam or something like that, and they think of these lovely beaches and cottages and stuff like that. Have they been to Bhimapalli? Have they been to Valiyathura? Have they seen what's happening? And I apologize to the people who are listening to us only on a podcast, on just audio and not video and not on YouTube. But I do, Prem, do you think we can take 2 minutes? I just want to show people, what it might, what that place looks like.
2 minutes, take all the time you want, because this is important.
Hang on. I will need to make sure that I have it open. There we go. Okay. I'm sharing my screen for those people who are listening to us. What I'm trying to show you, can you see this frame? You can see it, right?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Just trying to take people over to Trivandrum and a beach in Kerala, southernmost tip. This is actually south of Trivandrum even, but then also show you how the beaches have changed. And what I'm showing here, and this is again for the benefit of people who are just listening to us, is a Google map which compares what the beaches north of Trivandrum, Valiyathura, looked like. Well, I guess it's kind of north of Trivandrum. Trivandrum is long and big and all that, so somewhere in the agglomerate. The way these beaches looked in 2003 and how it looks now. And basically, there is so much seawater ingress that the beach is completely gone. There is no beach anymore. and the water is right up to and swallowing the houses which were once beachside. Now many of those houses are gone into the sea, um, and now the sea is right up to their their front room. If you've read Marginlands, this is the chapter called Eating Up the Coast, where we talk about this in detail. And here I've put my cursor to show what you can see the time lapse that's going. And I would strongly recommend people listening to us to go to YouTube to see it just for this part even. And you'll see how the beach changes around 2016, 2017, which is when the uh, the seawalls and the breakwater further south start being built for the ports, and basically that's when the erosion just starts taking a completely different turn. And here's this picture now tells you exactly what it looks like and what it feels like to live along the coast in Kerala. This is at Bhimapalli, and the water is right up to these people's doorstep. There are boats which are half inside houses now. Half of the houses are broken and fallen into the water. So that's quite devastating, really, to look at it. You'll see sandbags where they're trying to stop the seas, and this is the Arabian Sea. Imagine how rough it can get, especially during this time. And this is how these people are living now. And now imagine these containers, nurdles, all kinds of toxic things floating in this water also. And uh, you'll get a sense of what it must be like on these coasts. To be a fisherman, where without a beach to push off your boat from for fishing, but more than that, also to be losing your house to all kinds of issues. And there's also climate change, like Mr. Grinson George said, which is causing a lot of problems for these people. So imagine the double whammy, triple whammy that the fishermen are facing. What you're looking at right now is how the sea has come right up to and eaten up 3 to 4 rows of houses, and now this house, which is half eaten, is on the shore. And this last picture but one, is when the beaches are good, there are people who are engaged in shore scenes, and that's a kind of fishing. And now imagine these beaches which have nurdles fishing up, washing ashore, and so on. So it just gives you a sense of a culture which is so wedded to the coast and wedded to fishing and so on, which has to then face what it's facing right now. And I will stop share.
Yeah, I remember that time that we spent chronicling a lot of this, and a memory that still remains. And that house no longer exists, by the way. But if you remember, there was this house
Yeah.
where the sea had scooped the
Yes.
floor off.
Flora from inside.
Yeah,
Yes.
from under, and the
Yes.
house was sitting on sandbags.
Yes.
Which
Bindu's
basically
house.
means, yeah, Bindu's
Yeah.
house.
Mhm.
Which basically means uncertain footing.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there was this cot with Bindu's elderly, ailing father lying on it.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
And the big irony, Aarti, is even today, if you look at the Kerala Tourism Development Corporation's posters, what you find are the beaches of Kerala being given, enormous space, God's own country, and the picture will be Kollam Beach. That picture is at least 20 years old, because as of today, there is no Kollam Beach.
Yeah, we saw, remember? It was just like this
Yeah.
beach, one tiny little scoop of a beach with hardly any sand on it. Yes.
And those lounging beds, in low tide, there was water coming under the beds. How are you supposed to lounge on a bed that could float off into the sea? Yeah, it's as
So
you
now
say.
go through this coast now, and you bookend it with 2 terminals, shipping terminals, and you have ships plying, which, God forbid, if there are other accidents.
Which brings us back to that fundamental question, right? What the heck is in these containers? And the reason why either you or I keep repeatedly harping on this is, in the first place, it should be very easy to answer. It shouldn't have taken as many days as it has. We are talking of May 23rd. We are now on June 7, 8. as we are recording this, ships have to file manifests of all cargo on board when they call in at a port.
Yeah.
This document is there. The
Yeah.
Elsa had sailed from Colombo port. It docked at Vizhinjam on May 23rd. On that day, the manifest would have been filed. It is on file at the port. Why is it so damn difficult? And finally, what happens? It takes the High Court ordering the Kerala government to publish the full manifest before the fog partly clears. Because, I mean, I haven't seen the manifest that has been published. I've only seen the newspaper reports of that. There have been reports in the Indian Express, there have been reports in the Hindu, etc., giving a list of what has been published by the Kerala government under order of the High Court. And what strikes you is that list totals only 503 containers, including 73 empty containers. Whereas on day one, we knew the Elsa had 640 containers.
640, yeah.
So where are the 137 containers? What is in them?
It's really strange. And it makes you wonder what else you don't know or what else you will never know, you know. And I don't want to indulge in conspiracy theories, but it just, I mean, why should it be a mystery, you know?
Yeah.
And then you wonder whether people will do the right thing.
I mean, both Mr. Somayajulu and Murli made the point, right? That anything to do with a ship, the records are easily accessible.
Very
They're
easily,
all there.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
And
It's highly documented.
Yeah, and here we're still struggling to find out what the Dickens is under the ocean.
And in a bizarre but in a bizarre coincidence, Paul Salopek, who was on our first episode, is sailing the seas, trying to reach Alaska, where he's going to walk through down the Americas. And his boat, his cargo ship, comes across a ship on fire, which has a bunch of EVs, electric vehicles, and other hybrid vehicles, etc., which is on fire. And guess who? The ship's owner is closely linked to the same company that has this sunken ship off the coast of Kerala. They used to own part of this other company or whatever, but it's related. And
I'll probably stick this in the Substack or one of those things, but both the Elsa 3 and MSC have a history. Lots of incidents, including, by the way, there was this one place where drugs were involved.
Yeah, cocaine. Off the coast of Philadelphia.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
20 tons or something. It was ridiculous. Yeah.
One point, it was the US Customs that discovered it. It was the MS Guyane, I think it is, Gayana, in 2019. 20 tons of cocaine worth 1.3 billion that was smuggled abroad on an MSC Guyane ship. I mean, I don't blame Peter and the others for indulging in conspiracy theories because there is enough smoke. There is enough smoke floating around. The question is, what exactly is the nature of the fire? I think we'll stop here because we have to stop at some point.
Yes.
But we'll keep following up on this because this is
we will not make the mistake of mainstream media of just letting the ball drop. Let's see if we can keep an eye on this one and update you guys as and when we know more.
Right. Meanwhile, guys, as usual, there's a subscribe link below. There's a button, a bell icon that you press in case you want to be informed of episodes as they drop. The show notes will contain details on how to get us and relevant links to everything that we've been talking about over here. So that's it for this episode. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks with more. And if there are developments in between, we'll probably do interstitial episodes or maybe just get on an Instagram live or whatever to talk about these things.
Yes. Thank you. This is Prem Panikar and Arti Kumar Rao signing off. Please do write into us, marginlands@gmail.com, if you need to reach us with any comments or any feedback, whatever you might have. See you soon. See you in 2 weeks, barring any updates that need us to intervene in between. Take care.